Hello, hello. How's it going, everyone? How are you all doing today? I am aware that the music is particularly somber right now, but that's less to do with anything actually meaningful, and more because I just clicked the first song I could find, and Happy Moonlight Sonata. So there you go. Let me just make sure it's slightly a little too tall for this seat. There we go. How is everyone doing today? Oh my goodness, what a weekend it's been. There is, of course, some housekeeping drama I'm sure I can address. If anyone really wants to know, you can ask. But if not, we'll jump right into the topic at hand. I'm gonna let a few people come on in, though. I have a few super chats already. Wow! To Pure Clip, thank you for the super chats early. That is fantastic to see that. Wow, you are fantastic. Let's take a look at these super chats real quick. Just read Fandom is Ugly by Mel Stanfill. An analysis of fandom outrage. There were big blind spots. Assuming all fanfic writers are straight women, or the only reason to dislike MCU is if you hate diversity. Okay. The book had some good points, but it made me miss your work. You always bring a lot of nuance. Looking forward to this as a palate cleanser. Well, first off, thank you so much for the super chats. I'm not familiar with this book. Never read it. Couldn't speak to Mel Stanfield's biases, but hey, you know what? I'm grateful for any critical text on the subject. It sounds like, though, that she's kind of placing a lot of undue blame onto shipping and onto the bigotry of audiences, which, let's be quite honest, there's a ton of reasons why not to like some people in some material. It's not always bigotry, it's not always grifting or whatever. Sometimes it's just, hey, this thing doesn't connect with you, and that's cool. So, there you go. That's what I gotta worry about sometimes. Oh my goodness. Nothing like Moonlight Sonata in a video essay. Listen, I just clicked randomly. I didn't even look at what song I was clicking. Just it was a public domain, no royalty song, so there you go, that's what we get with. Yeah, look, the MCU has problems. I am fully aware of many of them and happily criticize so many of them. But, you know, the inclusion of minorities is certainly not any of them. Now, today's video, we have a lot to discuss. Well, today's stream should have a lot to discuss. We're going to hit a lot of different topics. Oh, Nick Wolf, thank you. Thank you for the super chat. Yeah, so something we're going to discuss today. We're going to watch a few different reaction videos. We're going to talk about a few different ideas and topics. We're going to discuss the idea of diversity in media. Now, one thing I do want to point out right now, before we get really started and stuck in the weeds, is that diversity itself is neither a positive nor a negative. It's a very neutral statement. And I do want to say right now, even though the title is Forced Diversity Doesn't Exist, that is not to say there are ways to do diversity wrong. There are many cases throughout history of what is called tokenism. Tokenism is very different from forced diversity. I'm going to explain to you right now. Tokenism is basically where you take a minority of some sort and have them as like sort of a figurehead, a character who represents the whole of a certain demographic. And usually they're not really a strong part of the plot. You had a lot of 90s shows where you had the token black friend, or the token gay character. And usually they're like a minor character. They don't have a strong impact on the plot beyond bouncing the main character's ideas off. They're kind of superfluous to the ideas. That being said, though, forced diversity, as you're going to see, is a very different discussion. Usually, when one complains about forced diversity, it's diversity right in front of your face, typically, with these discussions. There's a lot going on here. Nick Wolf, thank you for Super Chat. I love this Ask This Guy with the Glasses reboot. Man, I am never going to separate myself from Doug Walker all that much, am I? It seems like every time he comes up in conversation lately. There's a whole Discord now. Instead of doing No Nut November, they're doing No Nostalgia Critic November. I won't call out which friend of mine's Discord that is, Trim. Oh god, what is this song? Turn it off. I don't want to hear that. That's too loud. Sorry, I'm going to turn the music off. It's just too much. Okay, no, but they're doing No Nostalgia Critic November, and every avatar in that Discord has now replaced itself with a Doug Walker image. And it's very disorienting because now I feel like I'm staring at myself at my at the videos I watched when I was like in high school all over again. It's terrifying. Oh, Thuman, you're on here. Cool, cool, cool. I wish you luck discussing this topic. I get a lot of hate for my blackwashing video for saying it doesn't exist. I hope people are open to hear a different side to it. Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, and with the whole concept of blackwashing especially, people get very up in arms when you decide to reinterpret a character through a different lens. I was with a bunch of my friends over this weekend, and they were talking like, what would Zorro be from One Piece if he was a black man? And like that's just a conversation people have. And if I should mention that my friends who were talking about this were either black or brown. I just wanted to listen to hear what they said. And it's a very different perspective on it that I, as someone who is white, wouldn't consider. And that's the thing too with diversity. Diverse thought allows you to recontextualize certain things from a different perspective, and that's good. You want that. You don't want everything to be the same perspective. I don't know. Annie Nerd, thank you for the super chat. I forgot to say this in the Lily Orchard Sympathetic Villain List live stream, but Sailor Galaxia from Sailor Moon counts, both anime and manga. Yeah, I would say that. I would definitely say that Galaxia definitely counts as a sympathetic villain like that. 100%. 100% agree with that. Yeah, Galaxia is a great character. I love Galaxia. All right, let's just switch to my screen right here. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going to... Oh, here's another super chat. User225, thank you for the super chat. Forced diversity isn't real, but disproportionate representation is. As an Asian guy, I can say that Asians don't get enough rep, and when we do, it's usually a select number of old, present narratives. That is very true. You don't get enough rep at all. It's terrible. There's a lot of people, when they look at demographics they want to represent, they usually focus on specific demographics that may or may not be what their market testing tells them people are more likely to go to. And for the popularity of K-dramas and J-dramas in American media, you would think that the studios with their cynical mentalities would just start including more Asian actors and characters in their shows and movies. But, again, cynical marketing. That's a whole thing. Oh my goodness, no. I'll get into that more. Adrian Parchman, thank you for the super chat. What are your thoughts on race swapping? I don't have any thoughts on race swapping. I care if the character is portrayed well. I don't care what the actor is. I think in general, if the best person for the job is a black person, go for it. That's just how it is. So that's important. And again, I'm seeing Thuman in the chat saying this too. Zorro will be Zorro in One Piece regardless of what a random artist draws him as. Yeah, 100%. Regardless of who plays the character, who draws the character will still be the character. That's just how it is, So I don't care about... now, if it's an alternate universe and you use the race swapping to inform the character's personality. So, for example, Batman, if they make him a black man dealing with institutional racism. Yeah, that sounds cool too. But if they don't, that's fine too. People get way too hung up on that, and it's a little intense, quite frankly. Okay, so I'm gonna jump right into this topic with a few different. If there are more comments, I can address real quickly. I'm seeing a few different comments here. Race swapping only matters if someone's race is integral to the character. Otherwise, it really shouldn't matter to anyone. Okay, that's a fair point too. So, for example, whenever I see online someone respond to race swapping, quote unquote, they'll say, "What if we made Black Panther white?" I'm like, well, that would defeat the purpose of the character since he was made to be a black figurehead. He was made to be a black superhero in a mainstream role, and he's in charge of an African nation that has existed in there for thousands of years. If he's white, that would kind of be a little bit colonizing in a lot of ways. A little bit, very colonizing. Yeah, I agree with that. So it really depends on the specific character, sure, but 9 times out of 10, that's not the case. Especially if it's a white character being switched with a black character, with a made black or made Asian or made Indian. That's usually not a big factor for the white character, because very rarely do white characters' cultures actually matter to their character. Just point it out there. Okay, so I'm going to bring in an old name that some of you all may know. Most of you probably won't. Who here knows about your boy Zach, quote unquote? Maybe all of 5 of you. I hope fewer of you know him than I know him. Your boy Zach was also known as Richard Meyer, or Mayer, however you say his name, was the figurehead for some time of a group called Comicsgate. Their whole objective was to complain that comics were too progressive, too SJW. This is back several years ago. Now, I want to show you one of his videos to start with because, very specifically, actually, I'm kind of stunned. His average video was, all right. I want to start with Richard Meyer because the thing with him is that his arguments you're going to find are identical to the arguments today. We're going to start with this very short video, his most viewed video, which is Captain Marvel is everything wrong with SJW Marvel. So, his video's on, I'm seeing, do a response to one of his awful videos whining about Ms. Marvel. Yeah, that's fair too. It's actually funny, I don't think has a lot of high-ranking ones with Ms. Marvel. That's kind of wild, actually. But yeah, he made a lot of videos about 7 years ago and kind of fell off. He really obsessively hated Riri Williams. Like, he really hated Riri Williams, specifically. Most of his videos are about Riri Williams. It's actually kind of stunning. He hated a lot of Marvel characters, but he really had a particular hatred for Riri Williams. I'm seeing Ethan Van Sciver mentioned in chat as well. Yeah, Ethan Van Sciver, I will say this, I got into many arguments online back in the day with Ethan Van Sciver. One time he called me the love child of Pee Wee Herman and Rachel Maddow, which is an insult so funny, it kind of sticks in my memory years later. That was kind of funny, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, they really hated Captain Marvel even before the movie came out. So that context kind of leads you to go, wait, why, if they hated Captain Marvel this much before the movie came out, maybe their hatred towards the movie was a little, I don't know, a little biased? Who knows? Anyway, let's take a look at one of Richard Meyer's most widely watched videos about Captain Marvel.
Hi everyone. So today's video is going to be about Captain Marvel and how I hate her and how she's weirdly enough the perfect flagship character for new Marvel. So Marvel through most of its history has had Spider-Man as its flagship character. That was its first really big hit character. And he was just a very good representative for the Marvel Universe. He had that lower power level that a lot of Marvel heroes are known for. He had the put-upon schmuck type personality that Stan Lee kind of invented for superheroes. He was very personable. He was very friendly. He's a very much of an entry-level superhero.
Okay, I'm going to stop here right for a second. Having made a video every single week for the last year, I'm a little annoyed by how little effort this guy put into his videos already. He's just talking into a mic, and he has a still shot of Carol Danvers. I know it has nothing to do with his actual topic at hand, and it's kind of petty to say, oh, hey, your editing's not that great, but like it's amazing how low effort this stuff was, yet how impactful this was. I don't want to, okay, make no mistake, this guy got like talk show bits on like a Daily Show knockoff, I think. One of the Daily Show guys, I think, started his own show, or one of those guys. And Richard Meyer was interviewed. This was so significant that everyone in the comic fandom was discussing this matter. And this was the low effort stuff he was putting out. I mean, it's 7 years ago, so he's maybe got better, but I don't know. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about his argument. So saying that Spider-Man was the flagship hero. He was the everyman. His powers were pretty solid. He was the front and center of Marvel. Yeah, that's true. In many ways, Spider-Man is still the flagship of Marvel. He is the most popular superhero, period, by a mile. So to compare Carol Danvers to Spider-Man and say that they're somehow equivalent, that's a really poor argument because even Marvel didn't really do that. This image right here was meant to promote Carol Danvers. It was not meant to showcase her as the head of Marvel. It was meant just to promote Carol Danvers. It's from Civil War 2, I think, which centered on Carol Danvers. Again, Civil War 1 didn't center on Spider-Man, though he was a major part. Just how it is. So again, let's keep going. Let's see his argument.
There's actually a lot of complexity to him, but you get him right away. His name is Spider-Man. He sticks to a wall. He's got webs on his costume. Like, you get it. And then once people find out the Peter Parker personality, if you don't know that guy, you probably are that guy. Very identifiable, a great flagship character. And he remained a flagship character from the 60s until about 10 years ago. And then they kind of were casting about, they kind of almost were making Wolverine the flagship, I think because of the success of the X-Men movies. And
I'm sorry, you think that the X-Men movies made Wolverine a mainstream star, as opposed to Wolverine being the main character of the X-Men movies because he was already a mainstream star? Okay, that's fair enough, I guess. Nikosi G, thank you for the super chat. Carol Danvers was the first white woman Cap Marvel. Yeah, that is, I believe, true. The very first female Captain Marvel was Monica Rambeau, I'm pretty sure. And there were other... Well, actually, no, there wasn't there... There was Phyla... Well, she was an alien, so I don't know if she counts. Anyway, yeah, so he rambled a little bit, not very specific.
Then, for whatever reason, about 5 years ago, they decided, scratch all that noise. Our 400... I was going to say she's like the 400th most popular character. No, she's way up. Our 1,245th most popular character. That's our new flagship character.
Okay, so first off, Richard, if I may call you Richard, what is this grade school logic? It's like, no, she's not the 400th most popular character. She's the 90 billionth character who's most popular. Carol Danvers' whole thing for a while was that she was not living up to her potential. Back in the 80s and 90s and into the 2000s, right up to House of M, Carol Danvers was struggling. She didn't have much of an identity. She was dealing with a lot of problems after a few different major storylines. One of them being Avengers number 200, the other being when Rogue permanently stole her powers. Now, Carol Danvers slowly climbed her way up, but she was always a mainstay in the Avengers, but never like the main Avenger. It wasn't until House of M where she saw her alternate self living her best life, being like so far beyond what she was doing at that time, living to her maximum potential, that she went, okay, hey, maybe I can be more. Maybe I can be better. And that is fantastic. That was so good for Carol Danvers' character. Because it showed, hey, you can be something more. Her Miss Marvel run shortly after House of M was actually a really solid run. It kind of overlapped with Civil War and dealt with her kind of realizing the cost of working for the side she worked on. It's rough. But yeah, this video was released around the time that Carol Danvers became the Captain Marvel. So this was around the time of the Carol Corps, which was a big push for Captain Marvel in the main comics. For context. But at this time, the core of the Marvel Universe was Captain America and Iron Man, and Thor to a lesser extent because of the Avengers films. That really shifted the dynamic there. So let's keep going.
So they decided that Carol Danvers was going to be Captain Marvel again, and she wasn't just going to be Captain Marvel. She was effectively going to be the flagship character for Marvel. She's everywhere. She's everywhere except for the top of the sales charts. Like, she's the lead in their big, Civil War II coordinated with the Civil War movie. She's, she's so popular she gets 5 series because first 4 keep getting canceled.
I'm sorry, wait. She was in the Civil War movie? What? Hang on. What was that? Sorry.
In their big, Civil War II coordinated with the Civil War movie.
Civil War II. I got you.
She's so popular she gets 5 series because first 4 keep getting canceled for low sales, but they just keep bringing her back. She gets mentioned in everything. She's on every poster. She's right there in their face, and that's both the problem with her, but that's also the problem with modern Marvel. She is being forced upon the reader. They've basically thrown out everything they've done for 50 years. And I made this comment in an earlier video, and people kind of laughed good-naturedly, but if you go read the editorials, if you go read Marvel Age, if you go read any...
All right, actually, I'll get to this point in a second. Let's take a pause right here. So this right here is the beginning of the forced narrative. So Carol Danvers doesn't just exist. She's being forced on the reader. She's being put on front of every cover. She's being put front and center. In reality, this wasn't really the case. Carol Danvers was not put in front of every title. At the same time, you had the Jane Foster Thor storyline going on. Carol Danvers was nowhere to be seen there. Ironically enough, Ms. Marvel, which would owe a lot to do with Carol Danvers, was not pushed in Ms. Marvel's titles nearly as much at this point in time. Because at this point in time, Ms. Marvel was trying to have a falling out. Well, Kamala Khan was trying to have a falling out with Carol Danvers. Kind of the brushing up against the reality versus the fantasy of Carol Danvers. So already a lot of different things going on right here. Not all these characters are being forced upon us. What was being forced by Marvel editorial, however, was the lack of X-Men. The X-Men were being kind of drawn back. The Fantastic Four being drawn back from the mainstream. If you want to talk about being forced, that's an example. Now, Carol Danvers, she was given her own book. She was given, as Meyer alludes, she was given many titles. These titles with Marvel would be started up then canceled so that they could capitalize on the #1 issue, which is a practice I think frustrates me to no end with Marvel. But I digress. So far, he says that Carol Danvers is being forced upon us. Well, what's the evidence for that? Well, she's being forced upon us. She's in one major event. Okay, well then is Venom being forced upon us? Because shortly after this video came out, we got several different Venom-centric mainstream Marvel events. Is Venom being forced upon us the same way that Carol Danvers is? No. Well, Absolute Carnage and The King in Black are two major storylines that were more popular, just as widely promoted as Civil War II, and had larger consequences for Marvel as well. So, at the same time, also, we had the one arc where, what's his name? Where Captain America becomes an agent of Hydra. Was Hydra Cap being forced upon us? The problem with this is that the idea of saying that because a character it takes center stage in a event, or has a couple appearances in other comics, that means that the whole company is forcing her at every single point in time? Not really. And I'm saying it's not as I'm not a big Carol Danvers fan either. I don't love Carol Danvers, but to say that she was forced upon us is hyperbole. Anyway.
Interview ever. This is how Marvel, for the first 50 plus years of its existence, geez, way more than that, from like the 60s until about 10 years ago, this is how they pushed everything forward. They said, hey, we got this crazy idea. We really hope you like it. And if you don't like it, we'll change it back. And they did it kind of tongue-in-cheek. They did a umpteen variations of that, but they did that. New Marvel, SJW Marvel, the bad Marvel that has average sales of like 20 to 25,000 per issue. Their new thing is, we are doing something whether you like it or not. We really would almost like it if you didn't like it because we absolutely hate you fans. By the way, if you don't buy the book, we're just going to keep relaunching it. And maybe.
Okay, let's stop a second right there. So, already we have the appeal to the past, right? Back in the day, Marvel, if they would do things that were wild, they have these crazy creative ideas, and if they didn't like it, they'd listen to fans and go, hey, we hear you don't like it, let's push it back aside. But now, Marvel today, with its SJW writing teams and its and they didn't have DEI agenda, that wasn't the buzzword back in the day, but you know, oh, these monsters, they're trying to force the agenda on you, and if you don't like it, they're gonna push it harder, because that makes sense from a marketing standpoint. Can sell a product that isn't selling, right? The thing is, though, at no point here has your boy Zach, Richard Meyer, actually said what is bad about Carol Danvers in this big video. Just that it represents everything wrong with Marvel, and those issues are not selling well. Doesn't provide a single statistic. Well, Marvel just forces things upon you. It forces it forces all these SJW ideas on you, and if you don't like it, then too bad, you're gonna be screwed by Marvel. Like, they don't tell you any evidence for this. No information is provided to the audience of this video to validate these beliefs. That is ultimately the big issue with this argument, right there. This is bad because I'm saying it's bad. It's forced on you because I'm saying it's forced upon you. And those evil businesses just want to shove it down your throat. And if you don't like it, that's even better. You know, it's ridiculous.
We might switch out the writer, we might switch out the artist, but you're going to keep getting it. Captain Marvel is on like her 5th incarnation, and that's not an exception. You know, Squirrel Girl keeps getting relaunched. They even had this Hela character that nobody bought, and, you know, kind of like unofficially, she got like 3 relaunches. And these aren't like with some time and then like a new writer coming up with a really great idea. It's basically every, you know, year there's going to be some kind of new relaunch.
I want to be Gavin Carruth super chat. Thank you. Everything was better on my Earth. I'm assuming that was a Superboy Prime reference, so I tried doing my best Linkara Superboy Prime voice. Can't say it was any good, but hey, I tried and it was fun. Yeah, no, he does give strong Superboy Prime vibes. For those of you who don't know, Superboy Prime was a character in DC who was like from the Prime universe. He was basically a Superman fan who was given Superman powers, brought into the main DC line, and wrecked stuff up. Did a lot of terrible stuff. And most of his motivations were fairly immature. Great antagonist in terms of a great satire of the fans and fan culture. And entitlement, but there you go. Also, at no point does this actually give any evidence or explanations. Does Marvel cancel all these titles? Well, they do it because they want to sell #1 issues. Because #1 issues sell much more. That's an actual business practice you can criticize about Marvel. You're so close to actually talking about some of the more scummy practices that Marvel pushed at the time. That being the constant cancellation and relaunching of titles to artificially promote new issues, so that, you know, naive fans will go to the comic book store or the bookstore or look online, whatever, or use the various apps they had at the time, and go, oh hey, here's issue 1 of this character I want to read about. You know, it would be a cynical way to get more sales. Anyway, Myeonyeon, thank you for the super chat. Wow, that's a nice super chat. For years, Carol was the punching bag of the 616 Marvel Universe, alcoholic and literally ice during the First Civil War. Then, Marvel tries to fix it, and Chuds dunked on it hard. Though, Marvel's cynical X-Men replacement via Inhumans was lame. Yeah, the Inhumans was way worse than anything they did with Carol Danvers. The fact that they forced the Inhumans into the narrative as a way to replace the X-Men, who Marvel... Let me phrase that. Not that they forced the Inhumans. They just made a lot of Inhumans storylines front and center. In the process, what they did was they kind of pushed the X-Men out, and they drew in the Inhumans as sort of a pseudo-replacement for them. There are many theories as to why this happened, the biggest of which being that Disney Marvel didn't own the film rights to the X-Men, but they owned the film rights to the Inhumans, and wanted to put the Inhumans front and center as a way to market them to general audiences. That could be the reason why, but it's hard to say at this time. There's no real smoking gun as far as I know, but it probably was that. And in fact, in this photo, look right here, you have all these different characters. Not one of them, I don't think, is an X-Men. There's no mutants here. But you do see Medusa from the Inhumans, front and center, right there. David Deister, thank you for Super Chat. I didn't know you watched Atop the Fourth Wall. What is your favorite video? Mine is the Titans/Young Justice graduation day video. So first off, I don't really watch Linkara religiously, but I've seen some of his videos. I used to really like his videos, but not that his videos have gotten any worse or better. It's just over time, I've kind of like not had time to keep up with everything, but I watch the ones that are like, oh, I like this comic, or oh, that's an interesting topic. I'd say probably the whole Titans retrospect was one of his better stuff, I think. Though I do like his Cassandra Cain retrospective as well. Anyway.
So to discuss Captain Marvel is kind of easy because, like, there's not much there. She started in the 70s as she was. The funny thing is that Marvel's congratulating.
Incorrect. Carol Danvers first appeared in the late 60s. Ms. Marvel, the comic, started in the early 70s, but that is not the case for the first appearance of the character.
For stuff that they did 40 years ago. So they're like, oh, we got female heroes. Well, Captain Marvel, who was Ms. Marvel, she had her own series in the 1970s, and it was very much presented as, hey, look, we have a female hero. That's a big deal. Her sales were okay-ish. The character was okay-ish. The main reason that she was remembered for at all was because this is one of Chris Claremont's early Marvel gigs. So he always held this affection for Carol Danvers, and he kept bringing her back in kind of odd ways. For like decades, she was like a subconscious soul trapped inside of Rogue, who could very, very rarely, communicate with Rogue's regular personality. So Rogue had touched.
Okay, so talking about the Rogue storyline, decades is a strong word there, Richard. Years, yeah, years certainly, but decades, that's a bit much. Considering it happened in the 80s, the Rogue stole Carol Danvers' power, you're saying that she was in a coma for decades of real time, which means more than one. So you're saying that Carol Danvers was unconscious until the mid-2000s. Or 2010s even, which is when you're recording this. Anyway, Nicole CG, thank you for Super Chat. Crazy part is the Black Bolt 2016 is like the best comic Marvel has made this decade. That or Immortal Hulk. Maybe Inhumans ain't so bad. Yeah, so here's the thing. They are good comics with the Inhumans. And I think the best quality that the Inhumans brought to Marvel was the creation of Kamala Khan. I think Immortal Hulk is also one of Marvel's best comics, like, arguably ever. But still, all that is but just saying this idea by corporate was pushed, but the writers and artists were able to tell a good story with it. That's what it comes down to. Yeah, also she was binary back in the 90s, and I think late 80s she became binary for the first time. Anyway.
Touched her too long and like sucked in her powers permanently. So Rogue's powers are stealing powers, but people always think about her as being invulnerable and be able to fly and being super strong. Well, that's...
Wait, Rogue's powers, if she touches someone, she absorbs their abilities? Wow, I never knew that, Richard. Thank you. I had no clue.
She stole that from Captain Marvel. Her personality, she didn't. Captain Marvel in the 70s and 80s, she had kind of a, I don't know, like... just kind of like a TV, like a Charlie's Angel type of personality. She was kind of like bubbly. She could get strident at times, but she was very much of a girl next door.
A girl next door. That's an interesting way of describing Air Force pilot Carol Danvers, but sure, girl next door. All right.
So she kind of went, she went away when her series didn't go that well. She stayed around just because Chris Claremont had some personal affection for her related to his career. And then she came back. And she came back as some weirdly angry, super serious, hyper-masculine, humorless character that not only is just a bad character, but doesn't really fit Marvel at all. If you think about it, Marvel...
We're skipping a few years here, Richard. You're forgetting Avengers number 200. You know, the one where Carol Danvers is forcibly impregnated by an alien intelligence and the whole Avengers just don't care about that? And she gets angry at the Avengers for allowing her to be like mind-controlled and kidnapped and forcibly impregnated by an alien consciousness. And then, she went to the X-Men to have fun there and was put into a coma, left powerless, and in the desperation of feeling completely meaningless in life, turned to alcoholism to survive. It sounds like you're kind of having a selective memory about this, Richard. Like, yeah, I don't know what happened. Back in the day, she was so happy. And then I just stopped paying attention to her. And when I started paying attention again, like, it's like she was a whole new character. It's wild. And hyper-masculine, she cut her hair back already long after her solo series of Miss Marvel wrapped up. She had long flowing hair before that. She cut her hair short for the Captain Marvel relaunch. So, and again, there's nothing particularly super masculine about her character so far. She has short hair. That's it. There's nothing else there that's particularly masculine that is of note.
Is really centered around humor. Every character that's popular tends to have some kind of sense of humor. Even guys like the Punisher. If you look at him, he's got a lot of like Arnold and Stallone style quips. But you also, if you get into stuff, especially like the Mike Baron guy, this was a guy who was very like.
You think Punisher has a lot of quips, huh? Depends on the writer, sure, but what was it, the Garth Ennis run? You think that was particularly, what was it? Fifth name of the actual comic, but like, yeah, you think that was particularly funny and charming and quippy? What, Warzone, Punisher Warzone, War Journal? I forget the exact name of the comic line. The Punisher, the Max series, basically, the really dark one. Yeah, Frank Castle is blunt. He is not there for a good time. He's there for dead serious, does his job, gets out. This is ridiculous. Anyway.
Well-rounded guy with a lot of interests. He had kind of like a little, gallows humor. But I mean, there is no humor.
Punisher didn't have humor. He just did the job and he left. There was no jokes to be had. And there's some like really depressing Hulk stories. Wolverine was deeply dark at times. It's like these people never read comics. Oh, well, that's right, they didn't. They jumped into the culture war. But again, if all a war journal, there we go. Thank you, chat. If all you knew about comics were what this guy was saying, you'd have a false impression of the characters, of the world.
With Captain Marvel, she's bad, and she's bad on several different ways. Number one is just that she's very generic. Captain Marvel Captain Marvel sounds like the fake superheroes that they would mention in like sitcoms in like the 1980s. They were.
Do you have an issue with Marvel then too?
Always Captain and then like the word stupendous. So then you get into her, you go, okay, yeah, her name's pretty generic. What are her powers? And her powers are very generic. I always describe Captain Marvel as the generic superhero they have on the side of plumber vans or like in a brochure about like preventing gingivitis by flossing. Just like bright colors, generic name, strong and can fly, and that's it. That's all we came up with.
So wait, hang on. So you think that all her powers are strong and can fly, but not absorb or project energy? Is that right? Here's the problem with this line of discussion, and it should be obvious to anyone with a brain cell listening. And I want you to commit to understand this, because if you get this, you'll get everything that follows. The only thing that they care about is saying, hey, this lady, she's such a masculine woman. Look how manly she is. She's not feminine at all. She wears pants. Why no dress? Why no skirt, Marvel? Why no skirt? Short hair? Ugh, manly. Am I right, ladies? Also, her powers, pretty bland, pretty bad. Not good powers. Powers dumb. Powers big. Powers strong muscle. Powers strong muscle, fly fast. Plumber van. Generic. If you get the messaging there, you get everything. If you can understand what this video is saying very bluntly and very poorly, you will see the skeleton of every single imitator of this guy. Because even though Richard Meyer's voice is dull enough to put children to sleep in a nursery home, or nursery ward, I should say, his style became the template for a lot of other grifters who did it better, who had more polish, but are no different in terms of the actual meat of their ideas. Apophis, thank you for the super chat. Captain Marvel is a generic name as opposed to Captain America. Yeah, exactly. Exactly there. Yeah, no, that's it right there, of course. Yeah, it's a little ridiculous. And Captain Marvel from DC, another example, who's now Shazam. I know Shazam is a really cool sounding name, but Captain Marvel was his original name. 2 Captain Marvels. Also, I love how he's saying that Carol Danvers was the female superhero from the 70s when Spider-Woman and She-Hulk also existed in Marvel. But what are you going to do? Or hell, Ms. Invisible Girl from friggin' Fantastic Four, Sue Storm. So there you go.
So they decided to they decided to gin this really lame character by making her, in addition, super serious, arrogant, and completely humorless, and just miserable. And then the weird thing is that she's kind of like I describe her as being like a pseudo lesbian. Like, it actually would have given her more personality if they would have pulled the trigger and just made her that. So I think she's just been portrayed as straight, but she's hyper masculine. They have to give her the...
Okay, so here's another thing too you gotta keep in mind. Super serious, boring, doesn't laugh. One of the big complaints when the Captain Marvel film came out was that Carol Danvers didn't smile on the poster. And some people were going like, why doesn't Captain Marvel smile a little bit? Why doesn't Carol Danvers grin or have a good laugh? You know, it's one of those things where you look at it and go, this seems like a really weird complaint. But the origins of that were right here. This video came out, I believe, so it says about 7 years ago. Let me see exactly when it was uploaded. It was uploaded May 11th, 2017. So a year before the Captain Marvel film came out. Roughly a year before. So right there, you get the picture. Anyway.
These like very square jaw.
No, actually more like a year and a half. I think Captain Marvel was 2019, I believe. So there you go.
Stern face, aggressive and domineering. But then they do this weird thing where anytime she ever meets a female character, she's like, girlfriend. And that's, I talked about that, where it's like they're trying to say this is more elevated, but it's very infantilizing towards female readers and female characters, the way they put these things forward.
That's the other thing too. That's another discussion you'll see also later on. Infantilizing. They infantilize. They make these guys special snowflakes. They make them important, self-important, major. What happens is they say this depiction is hurting minorities. It's hurting women. I'm not sexist. This is hurting women. And what it ultimately does is it demonstrates that they're trying to add this sense of, hey, I'm not entirely against this. I'm really on the side of women. And by doing so, what they manage to do is illustrate that they're not trying to be prejudiced. They're trying to be supportive. They're fighting for the right cause. But they never explain how it's infantilizing. Never really explain what they're actually defending women and minorities from. They just say, this is infantilizing, and you're just supposed to believe that. So, there you go.
So, what, you know, it used to drive me nuts that they made her the flagship character, because I hate her to the weird extent. I hate her so much, I'll actually make a YouTube video about why I hate her. Oh. But no, actually, this is more about Marvel and this weird mindset they've got where Marvel has decided the customer is always wrong unless they quietly agree with them. We see this with how Tom Brevoort interacts with everyone. We see this how Nick Spencer and Axel Alonso. It is all very much shut up and buy it. We got Disney money. We don't care what you think. But as I showed in my video yesterday, sales are getting crazy low. We're talking about Marvel comics selling less than 10,000 on issue 4. We're talking about a flagship character selling less than 20,000. This is, and I brought this up yesterday, this is effectively no sales, because you're talking about a number that is so low, and these are sales to stores, not sales to customers. When a store...
Okay, it's the diamond market for comics is a hard one to explain. So basically now they're saying, hey, these comics aren't selling well. They sell bad. Bad comics sell bad. Therefore, if they're so badly selling, that means they must be bad content-wise. That's the gist of what they're saying. And I want you to keep this in mind, because this, again, is another component you're going to see throughout the entire video. These different videos. The idea that you can point to the sales being bad is proof that the character concept is bad. And not simply bad marketing, bad reach out, comic books not being as widely read from comic stores as they used to be. The inaccessible nature of comics for many fans back in this time period when apps were very popular with manga and comics and webtoons, you know. Baichi Apiodera, thank you again for the super chat. Not really part of the argument, but I am the type who likes female characters that embrace their femininity and are still strong, i.e. Princess Peach. 100%. I also think Sailor Moon, another great example. Sakura from Cardcaptor Sakura is another good one. From Legally Blonde, that character, another great example right there. Yeah, those are great characters too, and I love that. I love really characters who embrace their femininity, who allow themselves to be soft, and yet are still strong when circumstances come. You know, they stay true to their beliefs. They push for what they want, but maybe go about their own way. That's interesting stuff, I think. And honestly, both types of characters can succeed, and both types of characters can fail if the writing isn't supportive. That's all it is. Ian Colthart, thank you for the super chat. He has no argument. He's just mad that the character isn't tailor-made to him. 100% agree. Yeah, he is upset the character does not fit his specific desires and wants. That's how it is. Let's keep going.
Store buys a comic, they can't return it. That's why quarter bins exist. That's why I think that's where Free Comic Book Day came from. They were giving away all the issues of Squirrel Girl that they couldn't sell for the whole year. So you look at this thing of a character who...
Big Man Sum, thank you for the super chat. Man, I look back on myself when I was like 14, 15, 16. I cringe internally knowing I bought into grifter crap like this. At least I came to my senses. Yeah, so that's one thing too right there. A lot of people in my audience, you used to listen to this kind of stuff. And look, when you're 14 and 16, you may not know any better because that's all the experience you have. You're just become aware of these points. You may be having more of a sense of, wow, when I was younger, it was this way. Now it's changed. And you may not understand at that age what the change is doing to bother you, what specific element is changing that bothers you. And that's important right there, It's important to get a sense of that. For Mega, thank you for the super chat. Don't read comics, but as someone who's been on the internet and seen fan art, particularly for the last 20 years, I've always believed the specific vitriol against Captain Marvel is because they, quote-unquote, lost an attractive woman. And again, I'm not going to argue that Carol Danvers' old costumes weren't cool, weren't sexy. They were good costumes. But it's just simply what it is, I'm also seeing actual fandom in the chat. 357 views, 110 likes. Let's see some likes. Yeah, if you want to like this video, that'd be really cool. If everyone watching right now gives it a like, we'll get promoted by YouTube. So that's kind of cool if you do that. That's the thing right there. It's one of those things where, like, you look at, they lost someone they could draw, essentially. They lost someone they could salivate over. But, as we see later on, there's a big divide there between, what we saw with Carol Danvers and what they did later on with She-Hulk. She-Hulk was, ultimately, a character who was widely representative and widely loved by the audience for many years. But when the show came out, they had She-Hulk behave the way she does in the comics, and people rejected that en masse because they never actually read the comics before and had a different opinion on what She-Hulk was based on their fan art, based on their fan canon, so to speak. Anyway, let's keep going.
Who was never... that's the other thing. Not only is Marvel deciding you will like this character and we're going to keep pushing them until you do, they're not even going to adjust the character. So they've decided that she's not like a Charlie's Angels type girl next door. Okay, fine. So they decided to make her absolutely miserable, hyper-masculine, militaristic, haughty, proud. Not a fun character, ever. I mean, when you read her in Civil War II, they keep pumping her up, but I was like, I think the guy writing this hates her too, because she was making the wrong decision every time, attacking people for, attack first, and just the worst character. She was the obvious villain of it. And yet they tried to spin a new series where it's like, she's having a tough time. Well, yeah. When, actions have consequences. She brought all this on herself, but she's not.
So here's the thing that I find very strange. Part of the fallout of Civil War II was the creation of the Champions. That was a big factor in that arc's fallout, if I recall correctly. That was where Carol Danvers and Kamala Khan kind of had a division. They had a falling out. So to say that Marvel pretends that Carol Danvers isn't making any errors and isn't making any mistakes, that's wrong. But to also, by that same logic, argue that someone like, say, Tony Stark made no mistakes in the first Civil War, That'd be ridiculous too. And unlike in Civil War Part 2, in Civil War Part 1, you had, I was it Mark Millar who wrote that main line for Civil War, come out and say that Tony Stark was right. That he and all his amoral decisions, he was correct. He was the moral victor of the story, which is the writer literally walking up to you and saying, this is the right character, the one who made all these things that you're pissed about. So again, it's a double standard. When Tony Stark does it, your boy Zach here doesn't care. When Carol Danvers does something that actually has real fallout in the narrative, all of a sudden it's Marvel ignoring the flaws and problems of the character. But I digress. And honestly, Civil War 2 wasn't a good story. It kind of sucked. So if your argument is Civil War 2's bad, hey, I'm right there with you, buddy. I'm right there with you. But was it bad because of Carol Danvers? No. It was bad because it wasn't a well-written story. And Carol Danvers is just one part of that bigger story.
Interesting. So you need to. So if they got in their head that because of the movie, because of a edict from corporate, that they have to make her the flagship, you could at least course correct and see at the 5 series you've had to reboot in the last 6 or 7 years that the way you're portraying her is not good. So, like I said, she's a generic superhero off the side of a plumber van. Give her a better personality. Give her. All you have to do is copy the things that have been very successful. Have her, don't stop making her like some weird Brigitte Nielsen type. Have her be a Jennifer Aniston type. Have her be a girl next door who's really smart, but she's got some flaws. That would match literally every successful Marvel character. We're talking, even things about like Steve Rogers, where he's kind of perfect, morally and physically and all that other things. Well, he has this kind of deep, abiding sadness that he's always out of sorts. Give her something like that. I mean, I'm reading these Chris Claremont X-Men from the 80s and 90s, and man, he will just throw everything in the kitchen sink. And they're not. So you might have to have a year where you just do a whole bunch of things, find out, give her some new personality, give her this really, tragic backstory, get her close to.
Give her a tragic backstory, huh? Give her a tragic backstory. Why didn't anyone else think of that with Carol Danvers? Give her a tragic backstory. I've never heard anyone do that before. Give her a tragic Wow. What was she doing in the 90s again? What was that whole thing? Richard Meyer, do me a favor. What would happen in Avengers 200? What happened early on when you mentioned her getting mind wiped and power drained by Rogue? What happened to all that? Make her like Jennifer Aniston. Or not like Brigitte, what's her name? No. Make her Jennifer Aniston from the hit show Friends that was totally still relevant in 2017. I know people loved Friends. I never liked Friends. Cancel me for that. But like Jennifer Aniston, it's your first thought. Jennifer Aniston for Carol Danvers. That's your first. The Air Force pilot is just Jennifer Aniston. That's your logic. Girl next door type. Not a soldier in the military. Not a person who dealt with horrible cosmic terror. Jennifer Aniston. Oh my god. There's some tragedy, Captain America. Captain Marvel's way too serious. No humor at all. The GoCG, thank you for Super Chat. I think a lot of hate towards Carol comes from how the whole statistically more likely to commit a crime is the go-to falsehood for alt-right. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's like, I mean, yeah, I think so. But it's like, and of course she looks slightly gay, by Richard Meyer's perspective. She looks, quote unquote, like a lesbian. Oh my god. Yeah, no. So we can assume right now Richard Meyer does not know anything about comics, if that's what he just said. We know that, right? Like this is bullshit. Nothing he's actually saying actually has reflected anything. She doesn't know what she's talking about. With the whole being impregnated by the alien consciousness that became her son and her assaulter in Avengers 200, that right there was a great example of a storyline being so absolutely terrible, it derailed the trajectory of Carol Danvers back in the late 70s, early 2000s, early 80s. And then Chris Claremont brought her into the X-Men fold, and that was also the major thing. It's one of the most iconically twisted, awful stories of all time. And Richard Meyer is saying, hey, let's give Carol Danvers a dark past. Let's give her a bad event in her past and that traumatizes her. Why not? It's not like she's a recovering alcoholic or anything like that. Again, Carol Danvers was irrelevant in the comics in the sense that she had removed herself from the equation due to her own psychological problems, due to her own search for power, due to her alcoholism, and was not living up to her potential until House of M. And that was the first turning point with her character. It's a major component of Carol Danvers' arc, realizing that she could be more than she is. That is a major motivation for the Carol Danvers that she became when Richard Meyer first noticed her.
To someone, and Chris Claremont would have them stuck in another dimension as an alternate shadow version. Something. You got to give her something. You're giving her nothing, then you're giving us nothing, and then you keep giving us nothing. And imagine a slogan, imagine on a slogan on a bag of chips that says nothing, now with 10% more nothing to it. I mean, it's crazy. So, I mean, it's very clear they're not going to get rid of her. So give her something that will like her, because you're effectively at zero sales. You're effectively at pity buys by shop owners who feel like they have to buy her because she's the flagship character. It's weird, she's on every poster. She's the star of the big series, and you can't sell 20,000 copies. So actually, this one went a bit longer than I thought. I've had some trouble with the pictures. I was getting a little bit more fancy with the pictures, and then for some reason on this little Power Director app, it's only letting me put one picture at a time. So I was like, eh.
Wait.
So
wait, you have Power Director too? Okay, so Richard Meyer uses the same editing software that I use, apparently. Like an older model, obviously. I want to compare... Here's a fun game. Compare this video where we had the same solitary single image for the whole time, and compare it to any one of my video essays. Just compare the two, all right? Compare the two side by side and say, oh, hey, who's using the potential of that program just a little better? It's Wes. Thank you for the super chat. How much more tragic does he want her story to be? The problem is, I don't think he actually knows what tragedy is. Throughout his entire series of rambling videos, he never really touches upon what actually... And he's still making videos, apparently. He's still going. He's still going. Making the same videos you'd expect. Wow. AI or... Oh, he's just taking tweets now. Still obsessing over the same people he obsessed over months ago. Yeah, no. I'm sure he did a video on me somewhere here. At some point. He really loves Joe. He really loves to hate on Joe Glass and Magdalene Visaggio, who, by the way, she worked with Zack Snyder on comic book spinoffs for Rebel Moon. So she's doing just fine. She's doing just fine. AI generated art of Ray? What are you even doing, man? What are you even doing? I'm almost half expecting my face somewhere here, because it would be kind of what I expect by this point. But no, yeah. So he really just is harping on the same things that he harped on for years already, and he's not really progressing anywhere. He's just kind of in the same space. But what you're going to see, that I expect to see, is you're going to see a lot of what we'll see later on in these other videos. That they are following the same core structure. And I'm going to point it out whenever I see it in the next few videos, what those elements are. Gabe the GM, thank you for the super chat. Hi, Ant. Sorry you have to watch so much crap tonight. Yeah, I hear you there. It's what it is, It's not the worst thing in the world. Okay. But right now, I'm going to get a few more videos up here. Get something up right here. I'm going to type in Forced Diversity. Oh, my stream's up here. That's funny. Let's see here. Another video by your boy Zach. I'm not going to do that. Oh, here we go. Here's a video by Endymion TV. It's not super long either. No, actually, you know what? you know what? Let's go for a shorter video because I want to get through a few of these. This is by a channel called... it's a big channel, too. Altiori, I think it is. It's called Altiori. Yeah, this right here. This channel right here has a video called Diversity Should Not Be a Trend. So we're going to take a look at that together. I want you to keep in mind a few things, though, before we get started. Consider real quick what we've seen so far. We've seen a couple core arguments. You're going to see the same arguments echoed here again, I believe. But let's take a look. I don't want to make assumptions. I've never seen this video. They apparently have over 600,000 subscribers. We'll get to Endymion TV later. But for right now, let's take a look at this guy. I'm seeing some mixed responses. People saying they don't know who he is. Other people saying, oh God, why? So we're going to find out soon if he's any good.
I know you're scared, but I'm here to protect you.
Okay, this is after Terminator Dark Fate, which I thought was a... Okay, I'm questioning. I want to see in chat real quick. I want to get an idea from chat. What do you guys think of Terminator Dark Fate? I want to get a consensus from the chat. Good. Let's do good. Okay. And let's do bad. Okay, so chat, what do you think? Was Terminator Dark Fate, what do you think? Good? Okay? Bad? Give me a consensus in chat. I want to know what you think before we move on. I thought it was okay. I thought it was all right. I definitely liked it more than the last several Terminator movies. But I don't think it was necessarily, like, fantastic. It was good to okay, I think. Yeah, it looks like general consensus is that it was okay. You know, just it's all right. Not terrible, not great, not bad, just okay. I'm going to let that run in chat a little longer, so if you haven't voted yet, go ahead for it. You know, I see a lot of people in chat who haven't voted. Keep going. I'll let that run for a bit.
Over the past few years, there's been a growing trend in Hollywood to focus more on diversity and representation in films. While you can say this is definitely a positive development, there is a concern that this focus on gender and ethnicity is being prioritized over the quality of the story and of franchises as a whole. The main criticism of this trend is that it leads to a shallow and superficial approach to storytelling. When studios prioritize gender and ethnicity over the storytelling and the structure of the plot, the result can be a movie or a show that feels...
What was that just now? I guess it's a clip from someone else that she must have borrowed the clip from. So again, here's the thing. So far, her examples are Ms. Marvel. It's a couple other things too. I think they showed Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which has they showed Star Wars. They showed Terminator Dark Fate. Those are the key examples they have. I don't know why Doctor Strange was shown, because Doctor Strange is a white man, and the whole story focused on his love affair with, you know, his girlfriend who rejected him across different multiverses, and showcased Wanda, who's a white woman looking for her, who's actually less diverse than she is in the comics, because she's not a Romani at all in the MCU. Just pointing it out there. America Chavez, that was the only example, and she's a minor character in that movie. I mean, I guess because she has two moms that they mentioned briefly. I don't know. I'm assuming that's it. All right. Consensus on Terminator Dark Fate appears to be, it's okay. It's all right. With 63%, and 25% say it's bad. 10% say it's good. So, okay to not that great. That's fair. I guess America Chavez, which is a fairly minor character in Doctor Strange 2. But she's really showing a lot of Ms. Marvel, which I thought was one of Marvel's better shows, because it focuses on the family dynamic. It focuses on this low-stakes story about, well, not low stakes. It does end up with, like, universe-destroying power at the end, but the core of it is on community. It's on a girl from Jersey City, so New Jersey, gotta rep that, and her family and her traditional family values versus her wanting to explore herself more. I think one of the best scenes in Ms. Marvel, it's early on when Kamala wants to go to, like, that comic superhero convention, and, like, she's trying to explain her interests to her parents, and her parents, they kind of try to meet her halfway, and the dad dresses up as the Hulk, and it's like the parents just don't get it, and you know they don't get it, but she deals with it the wrong way, and you see, like, the heartbreak in the father's eyes, like that. I mean, I know the actor's like not that great, but like the way they portray heartbreak and earnestness in that show is fantastic, I think. Anyway, but that's the human narrative. That's and yet diversity in this case, it's a story about an Islamic family. At the end of the day, that's what it is about, and that is reflective in the narrative. Ultimately, it's a very good, very effective way to communicate all those components. And I think it's fantastic. Personally, I love Ms. Marvel. I think it's a great. I think Kamala Khan's a great character, and I think that the show does a great job at capturing her personality. So seeing the same kind of push, but this time we're going with more of a, hey, diversity is great. I love diversity, but maybe there's too much of it. Let's see where this goes.
Forced and inauthentic. This is because, in many cases, the focus on diversity and representation is seen as merely a checkbox that needs to be ticked off, rather than an integral part of the story.
I'm joining the club. You guys are really smart about this science stuff, but I know New York. And I can borrow a car from my uncle.
You didn't disclose that the vehicle was going to be a hearse.
It's a Cadillac!
For example, the recent Ghostbusters reboot was heavily criticized for being shallow and uninspired and a very lackluster retread of the original.
It's also not. This isn't even the show. Is a Photoshop right here. Right. Okay.
That relied too heavily on the gender of its cast. It was basically, hey, it's Ghostbusters, guys, but we're all girls. They expected the names of the actors to be a big draw. They also relied on the comedic elements, which really were not that funny. But the story was...
So wait, hang on. What she's saying is they expected that the actors they cast and the humor to be the big draws of the movie. But really, it's bad because there's women in it. That's your argument, basically.
Also lackluster, and more importantly, the movie failed to capture the spirit of the original Ghostbusters, what made everyone like it in the first place, and it wasn't because of the gender. When studios try too hard to...
Okay, so what was it then? What was the spirit of Ghostbusters? Because I don't think any sequel has succeeded at capturing the spirit of Ghostbusters. The big appeal of Ghostbusters was it was a bunch of corporate schmucks trying to run a business. Not corporate schmucks. They're like down their luck scientists and dorks trying to run a business, not knowing exactly how to run it properly. It was like bug catchers trying to catch bugs. The problem with all the Ghostbusters films afterwards is that they respect Ghostbusters too much. When you make a Ghostbusters movie, it should be kind of self-disparaging. You should be kind of making fun of Ghostbusters, I think anyway. I think the fact that more recent Ghostbusters films try to like deify Venkman and his crew, it gets the opposite message. When the original movie, they're schlubs doing like a dingy job. They're doing dirty work, and not dirty work as in like illegal. Dirty as in like just unclean. It's like rat catching. Whereas the new Ghostbusters stuff, all of it feels too shiny. It feels too blockbustery. But here's the funny thing about Ghostbusters 2016. Ghostbusters 2016 actually grossed less in the theaters than the newer Ghostbusters films did. It was less successful because it cost more to make. The big issue with Ghostbusters 2016 was it was too expensive. There you go.
To appeal to different demographics by just adding in characters of different ethnicities or genders, all they serve to do is end up creating characters that feel like token representatives, rather than fully developed...
Oh, now you're showing Prey as your example of token representation, where the whole movie takes place in the past, using an almost Prey is one of the few examples to have an almost dead language as its secondary audio track. One of the first movies to do that, preserving a language that would have been lost to time otherwise. The problem is there's no rhyme or reason with what clips she's showing. She's showing a bunch of clips of white people in the Marvel films, in many cases. She's showing clips of a bunch of the female Ghostbusters movie, 2016, and now she's showcasing Prey, which is universally agreed to be one of the best Predator movies after the original. What is your argument here?
individuals. This can be especially problematic when dealing with characters that already have an established history and backstory. The recent Star Wars trilogy is an example of this issue. While the trilogy was lauded for its diversity, many fans felt that the new characters lacked depth and complexity of the original characters. The characters felt like they were created to appeal to different demographics rather than primarily being an integral part of the story.
Okay, substantiate that. Explain why. How is Rey not substantial to the story centered around Rey? You can make the argument that Finn isn't super developed in terms of the story, because he does kind of fall backwards a little bit in the second and third film. But that's a specific argument with specific evidence. The problem is, in your clips, you're barely showcasing Rey as you speak, Finn as you're speaking. You're showcasing Rey as you're speaking, which leads me to believe that's not really your train of thought. But I digress. Deegan, thank you for the super chat. I've been a fan since the Lily stuff. I was an unfortunate soul who used to like all the anti-woke censorship stuff until I realized how tired and cynical it made me. Keep up the good work, man. Oh, thank you. And I'm glad that you're pulling out of such a really, dark spot for yourself as well. Because that stuff was in general really, a lot of the anti-woke grifter stuff, a lot of it is very cynical. A lot of it is very exhausting to kind of involve yourself in. So I'm glad that you're able to pull yourself out of it, because that's a big deal. And let's keep going. Let's see if they have any evidence here.
For instances, not to mention within this franchise just mentioned as well, it almost seems as though the new characters are straight up trying to outdo the original characters when that shouldn't be the aim. In Terminator Dark Fate, the latest installment in the...
Can you explain any of that? Can you give evidence for what you're talking about? Can you show me what you mean by saying they're trying to outdo the characters? It doesn't make any sense right now, because you're saying a lot of stuff, but you're not providing evidence for that. But again, keep in mind, the same thing with Richard Meyer. The past was good. The past was great. But the new stuff, the new stuff is bad. The new stuff isn't good. Because it's doing this thing I'm saying it's doing without any evidence I'm offering to prove that. That is a key component of a lot of these kinds of videos. Now, again, not all these videos, but a lot of them. Splungus, thank you for the super chat. Did the original trilogy cast have a lot of depth? I would say no. I would say... Let me just make sure, because I'm trying to get a little leg cramps here. I would say the original trilogy cast was also pretty bland in many ways. If you look at it on paper, what really brought them out was their performances and Empire Strikes Back. Empire Strikes Back added a lot of depth to the narrative, I think. But original trilogy, it's all very basic hero's journey kind of stuff, and they don't really have a lot of added nuance that later films and later narratives added to them. I think that the second, the first film on its own, the characters are kind of tropey. After that, they kind of develop a little more into their own directions.
Terminator franchise, everyone was praising the diverse cast, which included women and ethnic minorities in prominent roles. By the way, something that wasn't a novelty when this movie was released.
I don't understand what she's saying with this, because it makes no sense. People were lauding the movies for their diversity. That wasn't really a talking point. It just feels kind of weird to me, because I don't really see what she's talking about. She needs to have some substantive evidence for it.
This has been something that's been happening for many decades before this. And you can make the excuse that the movie was just bad overall, whether it had a female lead or not. Many fans felt that the movie was lackluster and failed to capture the intensity and the excitement of the...
What are these clips doing here? Why were these clips... I know it's not part of the video's point, but I don't understand these editing choices. These are really strange choices for this video. I get, Terminator 2, oh, it's great, but, why are we doing, the weird dog in the bars thing? That makes no sense.
Earlier films in the series. Dark Fate lost more than $120 million at the box office, ruling out any chance of further sequels. I'm not saying there are not going to be sequels or other movies in the future, but there's certainly a disconnect. The movie came off feeling like a cash grab because it was clear there was no passion in creating the plot, which was rinsed and reused. The movie
Right, but here's the problem with this discussion. You're taking Dark Fate on its own without context of the previous attempts to reboot to continue Terminators. And bar the anime, which I have not seen but hear is really good, most Terminator sequels aren't that good. Except for after T2, it all went downhill. T3 was criticized. Salvation was criticized. Oh, and of course, Sarah Connor Chronicles. That was really good. Problem is, this discussion is kind of vague. It's kind of strange. It makes no sense to me what this has to do with what we're talking about. And again, the fact that it's so divided from both the rest of the series context, the rest of the trajectory of the series, trying to see what it did differently than previous entries, as well as ultimately saying that it was bad because diverse. They haven't confirmed that yet. They've just said, it's bad. It felt like it was rehashing. Where does diversity come in as a factor of this? That's the problem. There's no connective tissue yet.
Blatantly ignored the Douglas Adams time travel rule, which applies to the first 2 Terminator movies, which is you can't change anything because it already happens. And
That's not actually true. Terminator 2, the whole point is changing the future. The Douglas Adams rule. In Terminator 1, it's a closed time loop. In Terminator 2, the idea is they try to fight to change the future, and it seems at the end that they succeed. In fact, they do succeed. They do change the future into Terminator 3. Yes, they delayed Judgment Day, but it's still a change in the future. Tiny Mushroom, thank you for the super chat. Can quote-unquote forced diversity only apply to IPs? Or is that all they're focusing on? Well, that's the thing. It's all they seem to talk about. However, as we're going to see probably, if you look in the gaming world, every new AAA game gets the same discussion. Every new game gets the quote-unquote forced diversity discussion. But there it's more insubstantial, I feel, because at least with the discussion of IPs, you can say, oh, hey, old thing not like this, new thing changed. That means it's forced. With a new IP, you're like, well, what's this new thing compared to? Random games from the past? It's a lot weaker of an argument. But if the game fails, they point to that being proof that the DEI agenda is working again, is unpopular or something like that, as opposed to the game just not being good. There was that one game that was canceled after a couple of days that was a complete mess, and these grifters would look at the character designs and go, "Oh, it failed because it's black people and diversity." But no, the game looked generic as anything. The character designs just looked bland, so it just didn't look good. I didn't like it. No one liked it. It was not very easy to appeal, and the gameplay wasn't good either. So there you go. You know, it stinks, but sometimes an idea just doesn't sell to a market.
Dark Fate seemed to ignore that. The movie pretended to be offering something new to the franchise while just being a diluted copy of the earlier movies. Just like the Jurassic World movies, they seem to fail to capture the magic of what made the initial movie so successful. To the fans, Terminator Dark Fate was basically an FU to the first 2 films, which everybody loved. They also disrespected those movies by killing off John Connor early off, making it so Sarah was not able to protect her son, and rendering everything that happened in the earlier movies completely pointless.
Okay, so what happened in those earlier films? This film is its own timeline. Every Terminator film kind of exists in its own timeline. Also, you didn't hear about the projected plot for Terminator Salvation, where John Connor would have just died anyway and been replaced by a Terminator. So, there you go. Anyway.
Coming back to why it seems as though the studios are blatantly disrespecting the idea of female characters and ethnic minorities is because they overshadow original established characters.
Wait, I'm sorry. They're disrespecting ethnic minorities. Okay, let's see what she has to say. Let's go back a little bit so I can hear the full statement here. She may be coming to a point soon.
Why it seems as though the studios are blatantly disrespecting the idea of female characters and ethnic minorities is because they overshadow original established characters just to place someone who fits those boxes in that role. For many viewers, it can feel as if established stories are being appropriated and merely replacing the male lead with a female one, instead of making a new story that is tailored to the female lead, allowing her to make her own mark. This approach of seeming to just be role-playing an already established character can come across as lacking authenticity and depth. Another example is Doctor Who.
Okay, hang on, let's take a look at what she just said. So she said that if you introduce a new character who's diverse, and it overshadows the established characters, that implies it's bad. So, or that people are being replaced, they're saying. Again, that's a key thing. The replacement. Keep in mind with Richard Meyer, he said the same thing. That Marvel was replacing characters like Spider-Man and the established cores of their universes with diverse replacements. But the reality is, let's look at the clips that she used. She used Little Mermaid, right? She used Terminator. She used, what is this? This is Okay, here's what gets really funny. She's using the Midnight Suns game, the Marvel Midnight Suns, right? I'm pretty sure that's your character you can design. That's your customized character. The character only looks like how you choose them to look like. Unless you're saying Venom as a demon who's still Eddie Brock is diverse, which good luck there. Then you have, again, your custom character. Then you have Miles Morales.
Which of seeming to just be role-playing or...
Okay, you have Invincible, which again... Okay, whatever, it's Invincible. There's not really anything changed here.
Already established character can come...
And now you have freaking Spider-Verse, one of the most popular movies for Spider-Man ever. And I'm guessing the implication is that Miles Morales replaced Peter Parker. But she's not saying that. She's just showing you an image to suggest that. And that's the key difference. She's not explicitly saying Miles Morales is a replacement for Peter Parker, but she's showing it while discussing how minority diverse characters replace established characters. That's how they get around explicitly making a point that is unpopular with the general populace to prove their idea. They suggest that this thing you recognize is bad. But they don't say it. They didn't say that. What are you talking about? She never said anything about Miles Morales. She just showed Miles Morales' face and showed Steven Universe characters on screen as a replacement of established IP, even though Steven Universe is an original IP that was diverse to begin with, and thus an example of what she's actually talking about in practice. It's almost like her point makes no sense, doesn't it? Or She-Ra, which is so divorced from the original 80s show She-Ra. It's basically its own continuity, its own narrative. That does include diversity because all the characters in the original looked identical. They all looked the same. They all had the same character model with different hair and whatever. Whereas the She-Ra series, which again is widely liked and widely seen as a popular show, includes diverse character body types, includes different racial groups, because it's just meant to make the characters look different enough that they stand out in a lineup. That's the key reason. It's not replacement. It's adding diversity so that each character looks different enough by their silhouette alone. That's all it is. It's that simple.
Come across as lacking authenticity and depth. Another example is Doctor Who, the long-running British sci-fi show that has recently made headlines for its efforts to diversify its cast, including the introduction of a female doctor played by Jodie Whittaker, and in my opinion, the worst doctor to date. While many fans have
Why do you think it's the worst doctor to date? Okay, let's take a look right here. For me, it's not her as an actor, it's the direction the show went. It's like they totally dumped everything we've been building the past couple of years. There's a new sense of wokeness that I don't like. Her relationships with the companions seems... Hang on, what? That's a weird sentence to highlight. For me, it's not her as an actor. It's the direction the show went. It's like... Okay, this should be a period right here, but I digress. It's like they totally dumped everything we've been building the past couple years. Period. There's a new sense of wokeness that I don't like. Period. Her relationships with the companions seem so strange. Period. I think she was calling them fam with other odd words. ... I feel like instead of a natural progression to a woman doctor, it was forced to fit a trend in society. At no point did you actually make a point here. It's like they want to be woke. How so? It's like they dumped everything they've been building the last couple years. How so? She calls her companions fam. Okay, and, David Tennant wanted to romance all of his companions. What of that? That was different. Same kind of different there. Every doctor has a different personality. It's the way the regeneration works. Do I think Jodie Whittaker is the best doctor ever? No, I don't think so at all. Is she the worst? I don't know. I think it's poorly written, but I also think most Doctor Who is poorly written. I think Doctor Who is one of those very inconsistently written shows where when it's good, it's really good. But when it's bad, you kind of forget about it. Thin Vu, thank you for Super Chat. These guys never once explained why diversity is problems. These trope in the video could exist without minority. These guys insist that diversity is the issue. 100%. All of these concerns they have, like all the plot points being dumped, all the the relationship between the Doctor and the companions, at no point does anything about that have to do with diversity. It has nothing to do with whether or not Jodie Whittaker is in the role or not. These are issues completely divorced of that, except for saying that all of this is because they want to be woke. That's the only part where it comes in. And again, they conflate their personal issues with diversity. And it's all very unfocused.
Welcome these changes. Others have criticized the show for losing its edge and relying too heavily on political correctness. It doesn't help the case for female lead characters when you change the show so much to this degree, make the female character unlikable and uncharismatic, and essentially make the story unwatchable. I'm not-
What are with these clips? Are you suggesting that they changed Black Panther to be diverse? Is that what you're suggesting? Also, you're showing Riri Williams in Black Panther 2. A common complaint, as you saw with Richard Meyer directly, was saying Riri Williams was unlikable. And again, keep in mind what Richard Meyer was saying about Captain Marvel. She's boring, super serious, unlikable, basically a villain. It's the same points discussed. 6 years apart. The same talking points. Repeated, almost verbatim, again and again and again and again. It's the same point every single time. They haven't changed the script. They've just changed who they're talking about. That's it. Right. Okay, thank you for the super chat, Big Man Sum. Funniest part of criticizing the 13th Doctor era for quote-unquote wokeness is that my biggest issue is it's the most mind-numbingly centrist the show's ever been. Yeah, exactly. They're talking about political correctness when really all they're talking about is woman in show, that bad. No, the show is weak because its writing is weak. And it has nothing to do with diversity. It has to do with the sense of conflict, with the sense of fence-sitting. It has nothing to do with necessarily the race and ethnicity or gender of the actors. For example, you look at the Acolyte, which I generally thought was okay. My biggest issues with the Acolyte was it was slow to start. The characters weren't given enough development early on because they were setting up as tropes to get executed later on or subvert your expectations. They set up this pairing system with the two twins, and I didn't personally like how it resolved, especially given the fact there's no season 2. Has nothing to do with Amanda Stenberg being a black non-binary actor. Has nothing to do with soul, has nothing to do with any of that. Yet, the biggest complaint when that show started was all that representation. That was the big point of contention they all had.
I'm not saying everybody feels this way, but a significant amount of the fans did, including us female fans. It just gives off the aura that the female characters make things worse, and people will draw that correlation, especially when there's been a long-standing character who fits a certain pattern, which in Doctor Who's case is that his character or expression was always male. Regardless of them saying he could change into anyone, every other Doctor that had come before him was male, and nobody cared. Another example—
Okay, again, an appeal to the past. The past was this way. We can't change that. If they change it that bad. Again, she's saying all the same talking points that Richard Meyer talked about, only with slightly better editing, but a lot of strange clip choices in this video. Not all of these have to do with Doctor Who. Half of that was Marvel we just saw during this Doctor Who segment. It's very confusing. It's very disorienting.
is Ocean's 8. This female-led spin—
Ocean's 8? Who cares about Ocean's 8? It's a whole new cast of thieves doing a heist. Hell, some of the actors aren't even alive at this point. So, well, at least one at least, but still.
Off of the Ocean's 11 franchise was praised for its all-star cast of female actors, including Sandra Bullock, Cate Blanchett, and Rihanna. Based on what fans are saying, the fans felt that the movie relied too heavily on the gender of its cast and lacked the originality and excitement of the earlier films. It was clear that the marketing of this film was that this is the female version. See guys? See how powerful we are? We can do it too. It's very cringy, and it makes females seem as though the only way they can make a successful franchise is if they piggyback off the franchise that male established characters already have. It's worth—
Okay, so first off, have you seen the movie? It sounds like you haven't. It's just a heist movie. it's just a heist movie. I'm not gonna make fun of her pronunciation of Sandra Bullock, because if I make fun of anyone for their pronunciation ever, I'd be the hugest hypocrite in the world. I'm not gonna do that. But it's a heist movie. It's just the same structure. It's generally well received. It's just a heist movie. It just happens to be in the same series as the other Ocean's films. But it's not like they're replacing anyone. They're just other characters in this world. Big Man Sum, thank you for the super chat. The idea of a female doctor has been around since the 70s. Hell, Tom Baker, the fourth Doctor, publicly endorsed the idea decades ago. 100%. Thank you for that point of view as well. Because, yeah, the idea of a female doctor is not new. It's been discussed. It's been presented as a possibility for years now. Because that's a thing people want to see, you know? Anyway. Yeah, I'm seeing people say they want me to react to actually good videos. I'm seeing that in chat. Dimitri Monroe. I'll get to him maybe some other time. Short Fat Otaku I've seen mentioned a few times. I might do him next or Endymion TV, but we'll get there. Also, but again, I want to point out that a lot of these videos follow the same structure. They're all doing the same talking points. I do want to finish this video just to get to the end of her point before moving on to a different one. Maybe a better one. We'll find out. I'll let chat decide the next one. But yeah, it's the same talking points from all the previous videos' ideas.
Worth noting that not all films or shows that prioritize diversity over storytelling are necessarily bad.
Okay, we haven't established that any of these things prioritize diversity over storytelling. You just said these shows exist. People praise them for their diversity, but really it's bad because it makes women look bad. This is but we're not going to give any evidence for it. We're just going to tell you that. Ridiculous.
Bad or horrible. However, when diversity is seen as the sole selling point of a franchise, it can sometimes lead to a lack of depth and substance in the storytelling. Ultimately, a successful franchise needs to strike a balance between representation and quality storytelling.
Are you saying that? Hang on. I'm not saying you're saying this, but showing a Gone with the Wind clip when you say they need to say show diversity has value in the storyline. Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind. That's the one you want to say is diverse, positively. Gone with the Wind. That's the good diversity. Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind. Now, I'm not saying that's what you said, but your editing choices are saying it.
To engage and entertain its audience, and it has to be believable. If you're doing a historical piece...
Okay, what does Tree of Life, Schindler's List, what else was there? There's a bunch, you just flashed a bunch of movies at once. And what is that? Macbeth? I think that was. What does any of that have to do with what you're talking about? Oh my god. Okay, so you're not actually saying Gone with the Wind is the example of diversity. You're just showing a bunch of clips you found someone else edited together and just playing that clip over this. And just, you didn't pay attention to what the movies were as you were talking, nor did you kind of think what the relationship between your words were with the specific films there. American Beauty, for example, that's not a diverse film. That's white bread as anything. But you're drawing the connection between those films and good storytelling, appeals to the past, appeals to quality, but you're not really thinking about what those specific elements are.
Piece about ancient China, it does not make sense to make 50% to 60% of the cast white or black, does it? It appears that diversity is now being used as a crutch or an excuse to avoid creating compelling characters and stories. If studios focus solely on representation to the exclusion of all else, it absolves them and the creators of the movies and shows from any responsibility to make engaging stories. All that seems to matter is that the audience sees people on...
Are you saying that Amazing Spider-Man 2 was on par with Blade Runner? Because that's the what your editing choices are telling me. I'm just, at this point, nothing you're saying actually matters. I'm more interested in how your editing choices reflect the words you're saying at this point. Because you clearly don't have a thought to say. the problem isn't that what you're saying is offensive. The problem is you're not saying much at all. You're saying people don't like this because diversity. That's not really, it's a kind of a flat statement.
Screen who look like them, and that is the only way they can relate to them. As a female, I can only relate to someone if they're female. As an Asian, I can only relate to them if they're Asian. However, the problem is that this emphasis on representation can backfire, with audiences becoming ashamed of the very representation they once wanted because of how it is now being displayed. For instance, imagine creating a show or series based on a popular franchise like The Witcher or Willow and filling it with diverse characters, but making it the worst thing anyone has ever watched by removing any passion and essentially creating garbage entertainment. In doing that, the studios, whether they're...
Willow is good. All right, enough of the Willow hate. Willow's a fine series. It's just a D&D campaign brought to life with all the wackiness and silliness possible. Again, the problem is you're throwing out all these different names, all these different movies, and you're not really saying anything tangible. It's like, imagine if Willow was diverse but badly written. I bet you next year you're going to say, oh wait, they did that, without actually explaining what was bad about it. Adrian Parchman, thank you for super chat. I recommend watching Vertus Joe's Relatability Isn't Representation. Yeah, that's fair. I'm down for that too. Let's keep going. Also, Alpha Eagle, we mentioned tokenism at the beginning of the stream.
Aware of it or not, are actually doing a disservice to minorities by making it seem like they're only worthy of low-quality TV shows or entertainment, devoid of any real character or depth. This is very troubling, and instead of taking responsibility for creating subpar content, the studios often then shift the blame to the audiences, which, mind you, also comprises of ethnic minorities.
Oh my god, okay. You're not explaining anything, lady. I'm sorry.
And the female gender, or whatever is being underrepresented, by labeling them as toxic and suggesting that they're the problem. This is not the solution, and it only serves to deepen the divide between the studios and their audiences. Telling someone that they're toxic for voicing that they don't like something, and that...
This is such a boring video. I might just switch it halfway through, because I feel like there's nothing else to mine here. She's kind of made her whole thesis, even though there's like 3 minutes left. And there's no evidence for it. She hasn't substantiated what she said. She hasn't tied it in with a good discussion because she's jumping from point to point to point to point to point. Get as many buzzwords in there as possible so it convinces you it's a point, but really doesn't really say anything by connecting the visuals she's showing, the ideas she's presenting, and all that together. The Wave Runners, thank you for the super chat. Don't have much to add, just want to give some support. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Like none of her clips really matter. This is just dull. I'm gonna move on. I don't care about this anymore. This particular video has not done anything to really convince me of anything yet. But we do have something by Endymion TV, and after that, I'm gonna present Short Fat Otaku because chat keeps telling me to show him on. Fat Otaku. I'm gonna add that to my search next. We'll get to him next. Wow, this channel has a lot of interesting content here. Anyway, let's go to Endymion TV. The video in question here is called Why Forced Woke Diversity is Dying. I assume this video at least will be a little different from the previous points of discussion. And hopefully have a lot of focus with a lot of intelligence, I'm hoping, to the point of contention. A description says, this video will be full of hot takes. Try to understand where I'm coming from before you crucify me. That sounds already so encouraging. I'm so excited to see where this goes. Let's take a look. Oh, DGen, thank you for super chat. This is random, but would you ever cover Kamen Rider / media for a younger audience? For younger audiences, easily upstands adult media in terms of maturity. Like it's... Oh, also it's DGen, but it's all good. Okay, thank you, DGen. No, I've considered that too. There's a lot of really good media for younger audiences. Kamen Rider, I'm personally not super aware about too much. I know of it, but I'm not super deep into fandom for that. But I'd be up for looking at that, honestly. All right. Alpha Ego, that's her criticism. Pandering and tokenism is bad. And that's a lot of what quote-unquote diversity is. Nothing more than tokenism and pandering. No, it's not. That's not really what she's saying. Because tokenism, as I mentioned before, is where a minority character is representative in the plot as like an addition. It's kind of like the black best friend, the token black friend, where they base themselves on stereotypes, but have very little impact on the narrative. The problem is that is a very specific component. Pandering is also very odd of a term because pandering is a very neutral term in terms of minority groups. The problem is with the idea of forced diversity is that the entire cast is diverse. If it's a token character, it's usually just one example of the character, not a whole cast. So the cast can't be a token cast. It is a token within the cast. That's the difference right there. Tokenism is a very specific form of problematic storytelling. It's not the whole cast is black. It's like, no, there's the black best friend who is there to bounce ideas off the white characters and not really do anything of her own in the narrative. That's what it is. And it's based on stereotypes typically, not so much a developed character. Many of these characters that we discussed in this video were actual characters, first and foremost. Anyway, let's take a look at Endymion here. Who I know primarily as the guy people keep citing in these the hidden secrets of the gaming companies that, he has no sources to prove back anything up that he says. He's just, whatever. You get the idea. We'll see what he has to say here.
I want to add to my post-woke era videos with a deep dive into diversity and how forcing it is actively ruining things instead of making them better.
Oh, great
Likely
ideas
by
first.
now you've seen the new Ninja Turtles trailer, which I personally think looks pretty fun. I'm digging how the Turtles are actual teenagers now, and the art style reminds me of one of my favorite movies of 2022, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Of course, like any modern remake, nothing can exist without something pissing off the internet, with this reveal showcasing that April O'Neil is now an overweight black woman. April has largely been portrayed as white in previous iterations, with the exception being the Rise cartoon where she's also black. And while I don't think April being black is a bad thing, it does reinforce this troubling double standard that's infesting the veins of modern entertainment. And I'm going.
Okay, how dare Jenny McCarthy exist as a fat woman, apparently? Okay, so right here off the bat, it's like, hey, this new thing looks really good. And it turned out, hey, it was pretty good, actually. This movie was solid. April was also black in the original comics, debatably. There was some back and forth as to how much of the original comics she's black in. Some people say that she wasn't black through all of it. Other people say she's black throughout the whole thing. It's a whole bizarre conversation I once had with someone, but they insisted, no, she wasn't black. And I'm like, well, here's an image of her looking like she is black. And she's based on a real person who's not, it's a whole discussion. But debatably, she is has some melatonin in the original series of the comics. That being said, though, even if you ignore the comics and just go with everything else, that means there's been multiple versions of April who are black. There's nothing to discuss there, but it's disturbing that she's not stick thin, apparently. Who cares? She's a child, or at least like a teenager in this movie, and secondly, nothing about April O'Neil says she has to be super fit. She's a reporter. That's it.
I'm going to say a lot of things here that will piss people off, but please try to watch till the end to fully understand why this
not melatonin. I'm an idiot. Sorry, melatonin. I'm a moron.
mentality of thinking is more harmful than helpful. While April being black is one thing, it is exhaustingly on brand that she's also unfit as well. It's not to say that heavier people shouldn't be represented in media, but I do think it's also not a good idea to legitimize an unhealthy lifestyle and then make that as a role model for people. April...
You are so annoying. You are so annoying already. I'm just going to talk about this. April O'Neil's a role model for other people, because overweight people can't possibly be fit or strong. There's at no point any indication that April O'Neil needs to be an Olympian, all right? And even then, if you look at the body types of Olympians, not all of them are stick thin. In fact, the majority of them are not. So literally nothing you're saying applies. And secondly, you want to talk about unhealthy. Have you looked at what the turtles eat on a regular basis? Some of the bizarre pizza combinations they had in the original series. But no. It's the fact that April O'Neil looks heavyset. That's going to tell the kids to it's okay to be, not athletic. Ridiculous.
Was always presented as a charismatic woman. She was someone who chased the story as a reporter despite its danger. But she was also physically fit as well, and was a role model to girls, with her design emphasizing being physically fit and made being healthy as something everyone should aspire to.
No, what are you talking about? No, that was never a part of her character. Her health was never a component of her character that mattered. Her only components were that she'd get captured easily, she was a reporter who would dive into a story firsthand, and she was had the right spirit for in general. All of this is so fat phobic and so ridiculously body shaming and connecting moralism to physical fitness that I'm sure he does not apply to any men who aren't physically fit. This is ridiculous.
Physical fitness is important. You should push yourself to be the best version that you can be, and being overweight is not good for you. And if you think I'm being fat phobic, that says more about you than it does about me. And I think
Really, what does it say about me then? That I think you're being ridiculous over this point. You're harping on an idea that fatness is somehow indicative of a moral failing. That's pretty, stereotypical fat phobia. And again, he's not saying, it's ridiculous. Myeon, thank you for the super chat. The old, I'm not saying that argument. Plus, what is OG TV April O'Neil a role model for? Getting kidnapped? Turning into a cat? Yeah, 100% that, apparently. It's ridiculous what you're saying, dude. You're harping on this point where, and also, here's the crazy thing about all this. The version of April they're talking about isn't even significantly overweight. At anything, she's mildly overweight. And a teenager. That's a normal body type for a teenager. What's the role model supposed to be there, Endymion? Trying to tell teenagers that they're bad if they aren't, at the peak physical perfection? Get out of here.
Making April go from a physically fit and daring woman to an overweight one is a disservice to her character, and it pushes a message that being overweight is okay, when we should be
Here's a question for you. Daring physical fit woman and overweight woman. The conflict is right there. You're not saying that you think that an overweight woman isn't daring or sophisticated or good. You're implying it, though, by leaving out certain adjectives of a complementary nature with the second example. Blue Box 130, thank you for super chat. Worried about how your YouTube recommendations are after this. Yeah, well, what I'm going to do is the same thing I do every time I watch one of these videos. I'm going to binge watch a bunch of Monarch after this, and that's going to kind of readjust the algorithm just a bit back to what I usually like to do. So, there you go. And again, all of this is before the movie even came out. This is a reaction to the trailer of the movie. So, if I remember correctly, that movie came out August of that year. This is in March. So, this video came out months before the movie itself came out. About 3 or 4, if not 5 months. Anyway.
Pushing healthy habits instead of making excuses for laziness and complacency. They could.
Oh my god. Again, he's making all these connections between body type and personality type. You know nothing about this character. At all. This is ridiculous.
Have easily made April a fit and daring black woman, and people would have been much more receptive to it.
Ah, much more receptive. Not completely receptive. Because you also know that when that happened, people also complained about it being quote-unquote woke. Or whatever the buzzword was at that time. You realize that more receptive doesn't mean they would be receptive. It means they'd find a different component to complain about. Which they did back then, by the way.
Not to mention that April at times helps the turtles fight, and she follows them into danger when it comes to chasing her news stories. This new version looks like she'd be out of breath opening a fridge, and it feels like a deliberate character assassination by the creators.
She's not that overweight, man. She looks slightly heavy. They can still fight. This is... You'd think she was like 500 pounds, the way they're talking about her. Like, what are you talking about? That is not a way you can talk about any person, quite frankly. And that speaks more about your own insecurities than anything else. She's a child. She is literally a kid. And you're acting like she's going to have a heart attack based on purely her appearance. That is... But he's not fat phobic, guys. He's totally not being bigoted right now about it. Like, she's just looks like an average teenager. It's ridiculous.
I understand why these things are happening, and it's because creators want their female characters to be seen as unremarkable and attainable. But as someone who works out a lot, I think normalizing and worshipping the concept of being overweight is not a good thing for either.
Worshipping? What are you talking about? A character design isn't worshipping anything. It just exists. What the fuck are you talking about, man? What in God's name are you on? Worshipping? A person existing doesn't mean you're worshipping that. It means the character just exists. Oh my god. Myeon, thank you for super chat. What about judo practitioners? It's plausible. You mean like champion judo champion, black belt of judo, Steven Seagal? I'd say April O'Neil looks a lot more physically fit than Steven Seagal. One thing I think Steven Seagal is just like a has-been on it. The thing with Steven Seagal is I've also seen him fight, and it's like this looks fake as anything, but I digress. This guy just seems like he's deeply, deeply insecure from this alone. But let's keep going.
Your health or society. There also seems to be this very common trend lately where a property which used to have a white character will be race swapped for their modern remake.
Are you complaining about Riverdale? Really? You watch Riverdale? I doubt it.
Characters like April, of course, are one example, and then you have Velma from Scooby-Doo recently being changed because Mindy Kaling always has to self-insert herself.
I've discussed Velma on a video I did a little while back. My opinions on it haven't changed. I think it's a terrible show. I also think that Mindy Kaling is not the sole person to blame for Velma. She wasn't the showrunner, but I digress.
A really good tone-deaf example of this is the movie Snake Eyes. By making him Asian instead of white, the writers end up missing the whole point of Snake Eyes as a character. By making him Asian, the filmmakers are pushing the stereotype that only Asian people should be able to do martial arts in films. Not
what? Okay, let's keep going.
Realizing that Snake Eyes was deliberately made a white man to break the stigma surrounding that stereotype. And with him being white, it was meant to showcase that anyone could learn martial arts, and it broke the tired trope that only Asian people knew how to fight. But
you do realize that it was a trope in and of itself for the white character to go learn martial arts from Asia, right? That fetishized Asia without having to have an Asian character on screen. That has never been a component of Snake Eyes' character. Snake Eyes' ethnicity has nothing to do with anything he's ever had, because Snake Eyes barely talks, if he ever talks. His face is completely covered up. You don't see any of his sneak features. Like, that's ridiculous. What are you talking about? Like Iron Fist right there. Snake Eyes, Iron Fist, Kung Fu with John Carradine. Like, those are all things back in the Steven Seagal's entire career. In the 80s when G.I. Joe first came out, it was basically only white people at the forefront of any type of action film. This is bizarre. This is so bizarre of a point to make. You're extrapolating such a big idea from nothing. The fact that Snake Eyes is white barely matters. His race is not integral to his character. What's integral is his origins, his upbringing, his rivalries, and him being a character who completely conceals his identity. He's meant to be nameless. He's meant to have no real strong sense of identity. Like, Myeonyeon, thank you for the super chat. Also, quote unquote, be better than Asian martial artists, quote unquote, trope. Yeah, again, that was the other thing too. A lot of white people in these action films would learn martial arts, be better than the Asian people who grew up with the martial arts, and that was meant to show, oh, hey, white people can beat up Asian people too with their own skills. Like, that was the message of it. You see that even in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where the stuntman played by Brad Pitt is just a better fighter than Bruce Lee. And that's meant to show how arrogant Bruce Lee was versus how, good old American fighting is so much better than martial artists. It is ultimately a very regressive trope used to show America can win anytime. That's what it is, ultimately. In America, they mean white. The Wave Runners, thank you for Super Chat. I do specifically like he went back to the comics for Snake Eyes, but not for April O'Neil. Yeah, exactly. He ignored the fact that April O'Neil in the comics is depicted as black. But again, I digress. Shadow Song, thank you for Super Chat. Endymion needs to be duct taped to the ceiling like that land party image. He is reaching for nonsense points. I don't know if I go that far. I don't want to duct tape anyone to the ceilings or be accused of saying I duct taped them to ceilings. But I digress.
But the modern creators of that movie only saw the skin and ethnicity and saw it as problematic. And unsurprisingly, Snake Eyes bombed because it wasn't true to its character. And now...
Snake Eyes bombed because no one gives a fuck about G.I. Joe. I'm sorry. But G.I. Joe is not a property that's particularly popular in this day and age. Just by virtue of not being Transformers or anything like that. It has not hit the stride. They've tried for years to make G.I. Joe a thing. It's always struggled to get mainstream attention for whatever reason. G.I. Joe is just not a property like Transformers that gets TMNT that gets all the butts and seats. Also, it wasn't a good movie. That's the other thing. It just wasn't all that good. The Snake Eyes, whoever played Snake Eyes, didn't really matter. The movie just wasn't good. That's what it comes down to. Anyway.
Now I'm going to say even spicier things that'll piss off even more people, but hear me out. I don't think you need a character to look like you in order for you to see yourself in them. Let me explain.
Okay, that's fair. I agree with that sentiment. Relatability is not a problem. Relatability can exist without representation. You don't have to relate to every character. That being said, you should be able to apply that lesson to the characters you just mentioned. That's the thing. Yeah, you shouldn't have to relate to every character by virtue of them being like you. If only you could do that to the other characters you're talking about so far. I'm just saying. Seems kind of hypocritical that you're going, oh, hey, you can relate to a character without them representing you physically, but I'm not going to relate to characters who are unlike me because of my own insecurities. The jokes write themselves.
When I was a kid, my dad worked at the Toronto airport, and he would oftentimes come home every Friday with a box full of comic books that the local shops had in excess. This is actually how I was exposed to superheroes and nerd culture as a kid. I would flip through books with characters like Spider-Man or Batman. And while I loved looking at all the cool pictures, one particular character stuck out to me, and that was Spawn. Yeah, I know, I was 5 years old and Spawn is dead.
Hang on. I'm gonna guess his point. I love Spawn so much. Spawn was a black character. Therefore, because Spawn was black, I don't see race when I discuss characters I can relate to. Is that what you're going to say? I guessed it already? Alright, let's keep going.
Definitely not made for kids, which probably explains why I am how I am, let's be real, but Spawn had a stranglehold on a young me from the moment I saw him. He looked insanely badass, and his outfit was scary with those glowing green eyes and the flowing red cape and chains that shot out of his body like Spider-Man's webs.
Yeah, Spawn's cool. I like Spawn. Spawn's great. Let's get to the point where you say that you make your vague point about the fact that the character who wore a mask all the time and had burned skin wasn't a white guy, therefore you are beyond racism.
child all the way to even now, I still love Spawn and always went out of my way to consume any media that had him in it. Spawn was also a black superhero whose real name is Al Simmons. I'm Serbian and Armenian, so I'm like a white person mixed with the Kardashians basically. By modern creator views, I shouldn't be able to see myself or connect with Spawn because he and I are different skin colors from different backgrounds.
What are you talking about? You shouldn't be able to relate to Spawn because you have a different background? What does that have to do with anything? That's such a bizarre... What's quantifying that statement? Where do you quantify the idea that because a character doesn't look like you, you can't relate to them? Well, the intention isn't that you relate to them. It's so strange what you're saying. Because you make these big statements and say, modern writers believe that if you don't look like the character, you can't relate to them. But that's not really true. Like, this is just a weird point. Maybe there's a part 1 to this idea where he establishes all of his ideas, but, like, the idea that you can't relate to a character because it doesn't look like you is ridiculous. And to say that because you did like a character who doesn't look like you, that proves that they're wrong, all these hypothetical writers who keep saying you can't relate to a character unless it looks just like you. That's bizarre to me. Ugh.
But even as a kid, when I didn't know what concepts like racism or sexism even were, I loved Spawn because he was cool. I didn't care what gender he was or what color his skin is or who he voted for. I just loved him because he looked...
Wait, who he voted for? What? You realize that Spawn was a hitman for the United States government, right? And goes to hell as a result of that. You pick up that messaging, right? That subtlety. Who he voted for. The fact that you slip that in kind of gives away the whole game, doesn't it? Also, let's be perfectly honest, you can like a black character and still be a racist. I'm not saying you are a racist, but I'm saying you can still like a black character and still be bigoted. That doesn't prevent you from being bigoted. It's irrelevant, actually, especially when the black character has totally scorched skin, conceals every inch of his body with a demonic fabric, and is a hell spawn from the fires of hell, whose entire thing is he has a cool design of his costume. So it's just bizarre what you're pointing out here. If this is the best example of a character who is defined by loss, tragedy, and the grueling desire for both vengeance and justice, you're going to have to find a better example. And if this is your only example of a black character who you can relate to who is not physically like you, that's concerning. Meon, thank you for the super chat. Oh, I thought he said, I'm part Cardassian. Would have explained the racism and sexism part. Yeah, I'm not sure if he would get... I mean, he probably would know that one, but still, Cardassian would be funny, actually. I was thinking about doing a Star Trek video, too. I was talking to Crimson Ender about that after a sprawlingly long Lily Orchard stream the other day about maybe doing a Star Trek video in the future. That'd be kind of cool, I think. Anyway. Yeah, I think he said Kardashian, like the, Caitlyn Jenner's family. Anyway.
Cool, and I dug the whole evil anti-hero angle. I personally don't believe that in order for people to enjoy things that they need to see themselves in media. I mean, I've played loads of games where female characters are the leads, like The Last of Us Part 2 with Ellie and Abby, both of whom are women, and even though I'm a man, I can still identify with them despite what's between their legs.
Okay, let's take a step back, though. Are you really... I'm sure if we dug into his channel, we'd find at least one video complaining about Abby from The Last of Us 2. You can say that now, but... Am I the only one who remembers the massive backlash to Abby? The fact that certain voice actresses got death threats over playing Abby? Like that's the thing. Yeah, you can say Last of Us 2 is a good game. Has a great story. But, like, you can't pretend that wasn't an example of massive backlash. And even using Lara Croft, whenever they redesign Lara Croft... There's a massive backlash to the character because people are upset that her boobs get smaller or she looks slightly different. Even if they go back to giving her big boobs like in the anime, they still complain. Anyway.
I also dig characters like Lara Croft from Tomb Raider, or badasses like Makoto from Persona 5. But in the modern creator's eyes, these characters are not perfect because they are not diverse enough. So by their logic, the only X-Men I can like are Wolverine or Cyclops, yet I love characters like Storm, who I think has one of the coolest looks in Marvel Comics. Not to mention...
Okay, so also, Storm from the X-Men 97 series got massive backlash for having the Mohawk look from the early 90s. But let's take a step back for a second. Lara Croft got a lot of backlash just from changing her appearance for the animation style of the anime. Looking at these characters, all of them are badasses. That's the thing you like about them. They're all strong characters in that they can kick ass. That seems to me what you like about them. But that's not really relatability. That's just admiring something powerful. That's not the same thing as relating. Because at no point here has he actually said what he likes about the character's personalities divided from their personality and how cool they look. No, sorry, from their power level and how cool they look. He has not mentioned their personality, he has not mentioned their motivations, their stories, none of that. He just said they are cool and I can play them, and that's good enough. The guy 493, thank you for the super chat. You can absolutely relate to a character despite not being the same race or gender. I relate a lot to Futaba from Persona 5 because of her story. Futaba. Man, after a few hours, my pronunciation gets all messed up. But the problem here is this. I want this guy to say what he likes about Storm without mentioning her costume, without mentioning her power set, or without mentioning her most badass moments. What can you say that's next? Because I can explain that. I love how Storm's regal nature is so powerful in the sense that she is able to position herself as this mature figure of wisdom and virtue, but also she came as a thief. She started life as a thief on the streets and elevated herself to the statue of godhood in her village. I love how her relationship with her fellow X-Men is like that of a family. She's able to empathize with them, but also because she's so powerful, her perspective of mutant powers is a little different. She wants to protect and nurture, but she also sometimes is a little out of touch with what they need to do. But her sense of justice is so powerful, her sense of maturity. She's a great character in that sense. That's just a few things off the top of my head. Yan, thank you for the super chat. So good old fascist tendencies. That's also fair. A lot of fascists do worship power in a lot of senses of the word. Anyway.
That her superpowers are unbelievably badass and cool. I mean, controlling weather? That would come in handy, especially since I live in Calgary, where the weather changes every 5 freaking minutes.
Okay, again,
I also believe that changing a character's ethnicity is a lazy way of trying to modernize it. We can all agree that if you're going to make a Black Panther movie or comic, then the Black Panther should probably be a black person because it's set in Wakanda. Yet at the same time, I've seen tons of tone-deaf takes online where fans, and I use that term very loosely, believe that whenever Marvel brings Magneto into the MCU, that he should be black in order to modernize him. And now I'm going to say another thing that'll piss off some, but you need...
Okay, so comparing a few fan campaigns to make Magneto black, or played by a black actor, which are not very popular among leftist circles. They want him to be a Romani. That's a big... So you have those components of the story. And you say, oh, this big, massive fan campaign... Well, it's a few people, really. Most people want him to be a Romani Holocaust survivor because that's a core element of his character. But again, a few fans saying online they want that, that's not really something you make a video about. That's not something you cement your argument about. Nor does any of that have to do with it being modernized. Usually they just want Denzel Washington in the role of Magneto. That seems to be what they want. A specific black actor in the role. Not really. Or Giancarlo Esposito as like Professor X or something. Like they want like a specific actor in the role. It's not that they want a black actor. They want a specific black actor, typically. And I know black Jewish people do exist, but the Romani element is also important as well. Could be interracial though. Could be mixed race. So the problem is this: he's just talking about how cool the black characters look and how badass they are, but not specifics. But they keep changing the race to modernize it, which is just ridiculous. It's not modern. Black people always existed. It's not modern to say that they're modern because black. Black people have always existed. This is they're drawing connection between saying racial diversity is modern. Well, why is that? Why do you think that is? Because racial conformity is the past? That's the problem. If you say diversity is modern, you're saying the opposite, that from the past, was conformity. Was everyone being identical? Was everyone being on the same page? The reality simply is this. By saying that, what you're doing is effectively stating that the old way was one way, not every way. But I digress.
Need to hear it. If Marvel makes Magneto a black man, it is a racist change that ruins the character. I said what I said, and now I'll explain it so you'll understand.
So you're going to talk about the Romani element, right? And the Holocaust survivor element, right? Those components that are intrinsic to his character development. So what's your opinion on Ultimate Magneto that completely changes that as well? Good question.
Magneto's backstory is heavily tied to the real-world events of World War II and the inhumane treatment of various groups. From roughly 6 million Jewish people, 600,000 Serbians, 3 million Polish people, and close to 500,000 Romani people as well. My grandfather's entire family was pretty much wiped out completely by the Nazis during this time. He watched as his family was torn away from him and subjected to the cruelty of the Nazis. And during all of this, my grandfather was kept alive solely because of his ability to build things and being a quick learner when it came to learning languages and translating them. Because of this, my grandfather survived World War II and was able to meet his wife and have 6 children. But
okay, so hang on. Let me hear that last part again.
And during all of this, my grandfather was kept alive solely because of his ability to build things and being a quick learner when it came to learning languages and translating them. Because of this, my grandfather survived World War II and was able to meet his wife and have 6 children. But the horrors caught up to him when in the 1980s my grandfather would take his own life after living with the trauma of what that war did to him. I'm telling you.
Did you just... Okay. Okay. Did you just imply that your grandfather survived World War II because he worked hard? That it was merit that allowed him to survive this horrible genocide? Is that what you're implying? That can't... I must be misunderstanding. He's using the memory of his grandfather who survived actual horror, beyond horror, to justify talking about Magneto. I hope I'm misinterpreting. But if that's what you're implying, your grandfather would hate what you're saying right now. That is vile. Yeah, I'm sure they kept him alive for a purpose and he survived the end of the war, but maybe I'm misinterpreting. I hope I am, because okay, I might be misinterpreting. I'm hoping I am, because I want to give him more benefit of the thought than that. But let's see what he has to say. Let me go back a little bit. Let's see why he's bringing this up at all.
Caught up to him when in the 1980s my grandfather would take his own life after living with the trauma of what that war did to him. I'm telling you this real-world story for a reason that deeply affected my family as well as myself because it's important. And characters like Magneto personify and represent the very real horrors that people like my grandfather went through during one of the bloodiest eras in human history. Magneto, like my grandfather, was just a small boy who saw his family killed for simply not being born what others deemed the right way. For having the shame of not being German, Magneto's entire family and his view on mankind was shaped by how cruel humans are to those that they see as beneath them. And
by not being German is because, okay, there's so much wrong here. Like you're touching upon components, but like the way you're just phrasing it away from what you can simply just say. You could just say, hey, Magneto is a survivor of the Holocaust. The Holocaust was horrific. Millions died. It's disrespectful to those who perished to change that. That's all you have to say. But the more you say it, he's not German. He was German. He lived in Germany. That's German. Are you saying that Jewish people aren't German? That people could be Romani but not not be a German citizen? Are you saying that because of the nature of his birth, he didn't deserve citizenship? Is that what you're saying? And what does any of this have to do with changing the perspective of a character? Now listen, I also think that Magneto should stay a Romani Jewish man who survived World War II. Mutant powers make him age slower, something like that, because it's so intrinsically important to his character, motivation, and ideas. But like, this entire diatribe is horrible. It's frankly terrible. That is absurdity. That is absolutely horrendous how you phrase that. Because it implied that you needed to have some merit or skill to be deserve to survive this horribleness, and then you use the real pain your grandfather went in a discussion about comic books. And again, you at no point established yet why a black version of Magneto is racist when, say, Ultimate Magneto isn't racist, because Ultimate Magneto is also not a Holocaust survivor.
Once Magneto sees humanity ostracizing and vilifying mutant kind for simply being born different, he views humanity as a whole the same way he did when he was just a boy, powerless to stop his family from dying because they were seen differently. Magneto is the representation of the trauma that millions of people like my grandfather went through during World War II. And him being a white, dark-haired Jewish boy in the concentration camps is just as integral to his character as T'Challa or Storm being black is to theirs.
But Magneto isn't white necessarily. He's Romani, you know? Yes, he's white-skinned, but that's still an ethnic minority that's important to point out. You're kind of overshadowing that component of Magneto in this discussion.
By changing Magneto's skin color to black and giving him all the baggage that comes with that, is saying that one group's trauma and injustice is more valid than another.
Okay, so already right here, you're pulling out disturbing imagery of the Holocaust in your video about diversity in film. You are showing real life when discussing the fictional mutant who can lift up every... Now, I did that too. I did that too with my Magneto video. I did show specific footage, but I was very careful not to show like explicitly disturbing real footage or real imagery.
In today's world. And if characters like Black Panther are allowed to stay black because it's integral, then so should Magneto's origins be rightfully respected as well. And the reason why I'm spending so long when it comes to my rant on Magneto is that this racial swapping of characters oftentimes forgets that.
Okay, so because a few fans on Twitter said they wanted Denzel Washington to play Magneto, you went on a 4-minute tangent about World War II. A hypothetical that isn't happening currently and probably won't happen was enough to motivate this response. Like, nothing about what you're talking about has any direct correlation to real things happening. It's all just like Twitter threads. A fan who's probably of the age of 14 saying, hey, let's have a black Magneto who doesn't understand the full grasp of what they're talking about. And that's enough to get you this upset, to exploit your grandfather's real horror and tragedy.
That people of all ethnicities suffer as well. To say that every main character must be black or a trans person now is equally as tone deaf as even thinking about making someone like Magneto into anything but.
Why are you bringing trans people into this discussion? Also, Endymion, the gay community and the trans community were also persecuted in the Holocaust. You kind of forgot that detail, didn't you?
But a white Jewish man. Everyone deserves representation, yes, but I firmly believe changing already established characters because the modern creators don't view them as appropriate due to their ideas or beliefs is why so many of these projects fail.
Okay, let me ask you this then. What about a character whose race has nothing to do with that character? You're talking about Magneto, a character whose history was very much defined by his Jewishness and him being a Romani. I noticed you had mentioned Romani outside of general Holocaust details, but okay, let's put Magneto, let's put Black Panther aside. What about a character like, say, the Kingpin? Does the Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, is his whiteness at all indicative of his characterization? The way I see it, no. And we saw Michael Clarke Duncan in the 2003 Daredevil film play Kingpin. It's one of the better parts of that film, which was kind of messy. Him being black didn't change a single thing about his character. So, while you can highlight specific examples, the majority of characters don't have that connection, No one cares if Kang the Conqueror's girlfriend is white or brown or black. Well, it was an example you highlighted before. No one cares. And Loki certainly didn't fail as a show. Got pretty high views, actually. This is ridiculous.
It's also why I personally believe that when comics, for example, have characters inherit the mantle of other characters, that it's not only lazy, but low-key, it's kind of racist too.
You think it's racist when a character inherits the mantle of another character? Alright, chat. How many people think it's going to be a Miles Morales or Sam Wilson argument coming up? So what do you think? Think Sam Wilson's going to be a point of contention here? Let's keep going.
A good example of this is Captain America, who many will think of Steve Rogers when that name is spoken. Nowadays in the MCU as well as the comics, Sam Wilson is Captain America, which many see as an upgrade for his character, but I personally...
An upgrade? Well, an upgrade for Sam Wilson's character, yeah, that he's inheriting the mantle, but he's entrusted to be the representative of America. Also, in the comics, there's more than one Captain America. Also, Sam Wilson is not the first person to inherit the mantle of Captain America. In fact, he's not even the 15th person to inherit the mantle of Captain America. Sam Wilson is a great character. He was handed the shield by the person who trusted him most.
Don't. And it's not because Captain America should be white, but that Sam was already his own hero with his own name and identity when he was the Falcon. And by making him Captain America, it's Marvel's way of saying that they see more value in Captain America as an idea over that of the Falcon. And that this...
Oh my god, you're so ridiculous. Anyway, David Deister, thank you for the super chat. These bad media takes are spitting on the graves of actual Jewish comic book creators like Jack Kirby. I feel this is the point where I have to ask, what happened to the hopes and dreams? Yeah, I'm with you there. The fact that they keep exploiting the memory of real Jewish people to justify getting angry at people on the internet is deeply disturbing, especially considering Jack Kirby's outspoken approach to hating on Nazis. A practice I fully think was a great thing that Jack Kirby did. He hated Nazis. Sam Wilson was always the sidekick to Captain America for the longest time. He was a combatant in arms with them. Him being Captain America was something that he aspired to be ultimately and fulfilled. And he did something on his own. He made the character his own. Gavin Carrith, thank you for the super chat. Might be a bad time, but I think a good essay idea is for how fandom treats their deceased creators. Stephen Hillenburg, Monty Ohm, Stan Lee, etc. Jack Kirby being another example. Yeah, I agree. Tolkien, another great example. Frank Herbert. C.S. Lewis to an extent as well. Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I think it's a great conversation to have there. But yeah, no. And also, Bucky was Captain America. Bucky was established as the Winter Soldier before this. John Walker, obviously, was Captain America before all of that. Hell, before Cap was defrosted, there was a second Captain America in the 50s. So there you go.
This mantle overshadows the importance and legacy of a classic black superhero. Because now that Sam is Cap, he's no longer called Falcon. His identity has been integrated to fit the mold of another character, and even though a new character takes Falcon's place, the point still stands that Sam is Falcon already. He doesn't need the mantle of Captain America in order to be considered legit or worthy of the spotlight. But that's not how these studios and creators see it. They only see legitimacy in established tried and true concepts that they can use to push their politics. It's why.
So here's a question for you. What about all the Robins? What about the multiple Flashes? What about Spider-Man with Miles Morales after Spider-Man, Peter Parker, Ultimate Peter Parker passed away? What about all these other characters who actually do have legacy characters who continue on past their initial appearance? It's ridiculous that you're acting as though these characters are somehow required to have only one version of themselves, that they can't have any legacy, that they have to exist as one form statically forever. This is so ridiculous.
Why The Witcher as a TV show hasn't worked, because the
What does The Witcher have to do with the Falcon? Okay.
Creators are more interested in pushing politics than telling the story as it is. And like Magneto being black, the showrunners of Netflix's Witcher aimed to make the cast more diverse. Even though The Witcher's world is based predominantly on Eastern Slavic culture. But because Slavic people are white, these modern creators don't respect it and feel the need to push their messages and politics into it. But you don't see that.
No one cares about that. The reason The Witcher show fails is because it's strayed from the plot of the books. The casting doesn't matter. It's the plot of the narrative. Politics, because they cast different actors in the roles. Yeah, because I'm sure the big troll monsters also existed back in real life too. Ridiculous.
Them doing the same thing when it comes to anything connected to black or Latin-led media. Why is it that Triss Marigold, a red-headed, green-eyed, very clearly European woman, must now be a black woman? Why can't The Witcher...
Who cares? That should be the least of your problems with The Witcher. If your biggest problem with The Witcher is the casting, you're not watching the show.
as a show respect its Slavic roots. Why is that considered problematic? Slavic people in general have largely been portrayed in an unfavorable light for decades now. How many shows that involve terrorists have bad guys that are Russian, Serbian, Croatian, or Albanian? As a Serbian man myself, where's my representation? The only Serbians I have to look up to are the bad guys of Uncharted 2, which are Serbians. And the only...
You can always watch a Serbian film that has Serbian representation. I'm kidding, I don't watch a Serbian film. That film's terrible. Oh my
God. Eastern Europeans are in a main character role, it's Grand Theft Auto 4.
I love how he starts this off saying, listen, you don't have to look like a character to relate to them. And then the second half is like, but where's my representation? Like you're saying, forget you guys don't count. Where's my Slavic representation, guys? Oh my God. All right, I'm gonna be right back. I need to use the bathroom real quick. I'm gonna come right back. It'll take me about 3 minutes. You all stay on chat. Give it a like if you can. I'll be right back. Okay, I've returned. Sorry about that, chat. Just had to take a step away for a second just to escape myself there, relieve myself slightly. Cool. Good. All right, let's get back to this. Let me see any super chats that might have been when I was gone. Nope, we're good. Cool. Let's just jump right back in.
Nico Bellic, who's not exactly a good guy. I mean, he's literally an escaped war criminal that does crimes to make it in America. But modern creators don't care because all they see is the surface level. They see white skin and then see that as an error that must be fixed. They don't see the cultural depth behind someone's skin tone. Russians and Irish people are both white-skinned, but their history and culture couldn't be any more different. But in the eyes of modern creators, it's just diversity.
Okay, so because Sam Wilson exists, that means it's a DEI thing, right? That's what he's trying to say. Because The Witcher show cast a few different actors of color for the roles that were traditionally white people. That's somehow a bad thing. Listen, everyone should be represented, I think, in media. But the problem is you're isolating specific examples to prove an agenda, that you're saying there's no Slavic representation in media. Now, I don't really think I can go through the whole list of every single role played by a Slavic actor right this sec. Actually, no, I will do that, actually. Slavic actors. Oh, here we go. A few Slavic actors. Mila Kunis. Olga Kurylenko. Oh, that's right. She's famous for playing... What character did she play? Olga Kurylenko. She played someone specific, I think. Who was that? That's right. She was... No, actually, I lied to you. She was in... I'm thinking of someone else. Oh, no. She's in the MCU. She's in the MCU. She plays... Yeah. She's Taskmaster in the MCU. There we go. I knew she was in something. Yeah, so... Right there. MCU... Slavic rep right there. Actually, all of Black Widow has like Russian characters in it right there. And Angelina Jolie, who played Tomb Raider. There you go. What's her name? Ashton Kutcher is Slavic, apparently. right there, a few different Slavic actors, famous Slavic actors. Oh, here's an example right here you didn't know, who are part Slavic. Well, Joe Manganiello is his mom's Croatian. I actually met Joe Manganiello, actually interviewed him once. He was a really cool dude. Tall as anything, though. Jared Padalecki, his family is Polish. Eric Bana, Croatian parents. Ashton Kutcher, I said before, he has a Czech father and a half Czech mother. I'm of course looking online for this answer. Oh, Leonardo DiCaprio, he is part Russian. Weird Al, his family is Serbian. Werner Herzog, who's in Star Wars, he's very Croatian, very Slavic. Tons of John Krasinski, very, very, so again, and he was in The Office. He has a whole directing thing going on. He's done a lot of work himself. They're all Slavic. So, saying that there's no Slavic characters at all is ridiculous. They all exist. You're just cherry picking specific examples to say there's no Slavs in media. I'm like, but here's a bunch. Weird Al. There you go. So right there, your whole argument falls apart. Not necessarily because I think the big issue is you're not looking. The Witcher thing is a mess because the Witcher show is a mess. There's a lot of problems with that show. But it's not because there's diversity. It's because the showrunners have no respect for the source material. That's the big issue. And if you're going to cherry pick examples from casting, but not acknowledge the bigger issues with the show, then you're missing a key component of why people are angry at The Witcher. It's a big deal, but you're hyper specifying specific problems and ignoring the big actual issues to further your specific agenda. That's the problem. It's that you take so reductive and ignore most of what's actually wrong in favor of cherry picking a specific argument. Also, as chat's pointing out, you had no issue with Henry Cavill playing Geralt of Rivia. Because Geralt isn't played by a Slavic actor either. Henry Cavill is pretty English, but what you can do. Geralt. Wow, that tells you something very specific that my brain's melting when I say Geralt. Anyway.
Everything must be changed to fit a message because they need to increase ESG scores and pander to their woke activist friends. I mean, in TMNT, April's last name is O'Neill, which is so clearly an Irish last name, yet this April is very obviously...
Are you still harping on that bullshit? Seriously, man.
Not Irish herself. So you took a character called April O'Neill...
How do you know she's not part Irish? Just because she's black doesn't mean she's not part Irish.
...who was white and had an Irish last name, and then you made her black. That's like making T'Challa King of Wakanda a white guy from New Jersey. Honestly, what these creators should do is make new characters. Have April or Velma be who they always were. But it doesn't mean you can't add to the mythos with new characters. But that would require actual creativity and real talent to do so that's why they don't.
Wait a second. Dude, you're showing Miles Morales, an original character who is black, as an example of a lack of creativity. You in one sentence you say, make new characters, and then you show Miles Morales' face as an example of someone who's not being made? Why, because he's Spider-Man? Get over it. Also, once again, April O'Neil in the comics was black.
And you want to know how I know these creators are tone deaf? Because they appropriated someone like April into being black. Yet at the same time, they took Bebop, which is a character usually voiced by or played by black actors in the past, and they made him Seth Rogen now. How progressive and woke of Seth Rogen and friends to replace a role predominantly performed and voiced by black actors with someone who isn't black.
that should illustrate to you that your entire point is bullshit. You know? Like, that's the thing right there. You can't say in one sentence that it's the DEI agenda, they're trying to make everything diverse, and then you showcase in your own, in that same sentence, an example of that being countered by the reality.
That's not very progressive, but I guess representation or paying black actors only begins and ends when the character's skin is black. You've probably also seen the pictures that show how modern
Oh, they're doing the ginger side. Ah, the eradication of all gingers. Ah. Which is funny considering that, oh, what is this? A minor character from Deadpool 2. What is that? Lady and the Tramp? Who cares about that? Starfire, in one version, happened to be darker skinned, but she's an alien. It's important to mention. I'll be honest, half of these characters no one cares about. Jim Gordon was fantastically portrayed in The Batman, so you're complaining about that already? Okay. Most of these characters are pretty minor. Like, they're barely figures. No one cares what the mom from what the mom from Lady and the Tramp looks like. Also, that's not a depiction of Lady and the Tramp from the original film. That looks like the Lady and the Tramp 2 image. So already, you're not really being faithful there. Bo was boring in the original. Frankly, I'll be blunt about it. Most of the She-Ra characters from the original series were pretty dull. And changing him was totally fine. But yeah, because a couple versions of the characters happen to be different ethnicities. That's bad. I also see Batgirl down there, which is not the first time Batgirl was played by... Barbara Gordon was played by a black actress, but I digress.
Entertainment bizarrely replaced...
Also, Baxter Stockman in the original comics was also black, and most follow-up versions was black. But in the 80s series was white. So, what's your point there? Also, are you talking about the Velma and Daphne movie that no one cared about? That's your example right here? Who else is there? Castlevania, again, not really the same character, but...
places red-haired characters with black ones.
Okay, you can do Barbara Gordon the second time, again. Ms. Martian is green-skinned and a shapeshifter. What? Wally West has been depicted as black in the comics as well. Josie and the Pussycats. You really gonna say that is your bastion of ginger hair and whiteness there? Anyway.
And once or twice it may be a coincidence.
Jimmy Olsen, apparently, who's been cast as a white person in the newest Superman movie also. So, go back and forth on that one. Annie. Really? Little Orphan Annie, that's what you're going to care about? Iris West, you don't care all that much about? Okay.
Incidents, but when it's this frequent, it's...
Electro, Max Dillon, Max Dillon's ethnicity has nothing to do with his character, really. Heimdall, you're gonna really care when Idris Elba is the actor you got to play the character? And, what is that? Lana Lang? Who cares?
It's being done deliberately. So are white people...
So is he saying it's a big conspiracy to get rid of ginger people from media? Well, it's funny you say that because when a character like, say, Daredevil appears, who is ginger in the comics and not ginger in the movies, no one cares. It only matters when a black person plays the role. Strange that, isn't it? She's a white Martian. Yeah, she's a white Martian who pretends to be a green Martian. So there you go.
With red hair, just a group of people that are largely tossed aside when it comes to representation. Really I unironically fully expect Marvel to make Jean Grey into a black or brown woman because she's white and redheaded. And for some reason, that just...
So wait a second, hang on. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times 4. So 32. And a few of these characters are repeats. So in the vast body of characters who exist across all media, you can name 32 cases. And almost all of these cases are comic book characters. None of this matters. No one cares.
Just can't exist, which is so bizarre. Yet to
can't exist. It exists all the time. You just don't notice it.
Go back to my previous point. I do firmly believe that you can,
like how Marvel wouldn't let Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, be a white woman with red hair. They wouldn't allow that. Come on, man. Like don't act so persecuted. 32, and two of them are the same character twice, by the way. Two of them are Barbara Gordon, and the other one's Jim Gordon. Because these 30-something characters happen to be changed in one or two adaptations, that means that we're eradicating gingers from the equation. Meanwhile, Othello was played by a white actor for centuries, and Othello was in the play a Moor, who is black. But that's okay. Again.
You can relate to characters that don't look like you. A great example of this would be how the Latin and black communities have embraced media like Naruto and, more importantly, Dragon Ball Z.
You're just going to say that without mentioning the big historical trade between Brazil and Japan, but okay, let's see if you avoid mentioning that.
I don't think I've ever met a Latin or black person who wasn't a fan of Dragon Ball Z, and that's not a jab at either communities, mind you. Because Dragon Ball is so beloved by these two very different communities, and we can see how many athletes who are black openly embracing their love for anime, which is awesome. Even newer films like Creed 3 are open about how animes like Dragon Ball and Baki have directly influenced the action scenes of that movie. Yet in many modern creators' eyes, they don't think black or Latin people should be able to see themselves in characters like Goku or Naruto, because those characters don't share the same skin tone as they do. But
have you ever talked to okay. I was just talking before. I was talking to, at the start of this stream, I was talking to some friends of mine who are, black and brown, talking about like what would Sanji or Zoro from One Piece be like if they were black. They also, a lot of black people, I'm not going to speak for black people, so if anyone who's watching who's black and I'm wrong, let me know this. A lot of black people kind of see Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z as black. There's a bunch of books written by black critics and even black rap stars, rap artists who talk about Dragon Ball Z and talk about how they connected to the black experience. Brazilians love anime, but there's also been a cultural exchange between Japan and Brazil for years. The biggest minority group in Japan of immigrants is Brazil, outside of the continent of Asia, basically. So outside of the Korean, Chinese, the highest minority group of non-Asians in Japan is Brazilian, because Brazil and Japan have just a constant cultural exchange essentially for centuries, for decades, maybe a century. Piccolo. Everyone say Piccolo is the character who he may not be black, but he feels black to a lot of audiences. 100%. Nick Wolf, thank you for the super chat. There is the issue of ginger characters being considered exotic to regular white people. If anything, we should be race swapping the brunettes. Yeah, hell, go for it. We have enough brunettes. Make some gingers. I'm fine with that. I won't mind. Brazil has a lot of that history. It's actually kind of amazing. And I noticed you mentioned Saint Seiya. That's a big one in Brazil and Mexico. So just telling you that right now.
But the cultural love and acceptance of anime has shaped many people who look nothing like their characters. I firmly believe that if these modern idiot creators got their hands on the Dragon Ball IP, they'd make Goku black and turn Vegeta into a non-binary Asian woman because they only see value in surface level qualities.
The problem is this: you're talking in hypotheticals when we know what would happen if an American studio got hold of Dragon Ball. And let me assure you, it's not making Goku black, it's making all the Asian characters white is what it actually would be. Also, Luffy from One Piece was portrayed by a Brazilian, and it's great. One Piece is a great example of everything you're saying what would happen happening and it turning out to be beloved, and everyone unanimously agreeing it's great. I don't know how the One Piece show turned out as good as it did, but it turned out really good. Also, the illogic of what you're saying is so ridiculous. It's actually kind of ridiculous. And all of it's based on hypotheticals. None of it's based on this thing happened, therefore I'm reacting to it. It's more like a guy on Twitter said, what if Magneto was black? I think they'd make Goku black in a movie. It's like, hey, you're getting angry for most of this video over a hypothetical. Most of what you're saying is about April O'Neil, a character who's been historically portrayed as either white or black, being portrayed as black in one thing once, and you getting angry about it.
People are more than the color of their skin, and we are all allowed to see ourselves and connect with things even if they don't look like us. I love characters like Violet from Tales of Berseria, even though I'm not a Japanese woman myself.
I can't imagine why you like that character, considering the first shot of them was that way.
I also love Barrett from Final Fantasy VII because he's this big, lovable dad figure with a goddamn machine gun for an arm. But the creators of this new TMNT movie or shows like Velma or Netflix's Witcher are low-key racist because they only see skin color.
Wow. Okay. Let me ask you this, buddy. How do you know they only see skin color? How do you know that? You're making a lot of assumptions based purely on your interpretation of casting decisions. You see an actor cast in a role and assume it has to be for this reason. And all evidence you encounter and collect validates your preconceived belief because it has to. What else could it be? Adrian Parchman, thank you for the super chat. A lot of these people sure act like Lorch. Yeah, they do sound like Lily Orchard, don't they? Lily Orchard is not unusual, is the sad thing. Her media takes are identical to a lot of these guys because, quite frankly, they all are cut from the same cloth. They see media, they presume intent, and they go from there. Myeonyan, thank you for the super chat. Complains about cynical business practices, blames diversity, and not capitalism. It's always so close, but so far with dudes like this. Yeah, exactly. They are complaining about the effects of capitalism, basically, marketing to demographics. But they never actually address what's actually at play here. It's not what it is. It's simply, hey, capitalism's going to do a capitalism. And that's what it comes down to.
They don't see value in characters beyond diversity checks and representation. And it's clear that these creators don't even care when it comes to Japanese media, with Netflix's Death Note making Light Yagami, who's an Asian psychopath that's incredibly charismatic, into a sniveling white e-boy who screams a lot. They even took L, who's also Asian, and made him black because
L is actually, what is L's nationality? L is a mix between Japanese, English, and Russian. Hey, it's your Slavic rep. There you go, buddy.
I guess making Death Note into an all-Asian cast that takes place in Japan is just not diverse enough. It's ridiculous. And even when they do...
Wait a second. Hang on. So, by making Light white, that's a point in your favor of diversity? That should be a case of the opposite of it, actually. But I digress.
You add in diverse characters like Finn in Star Wars, they only did it so websites would write positive articles about it, while also removing Finn from posters or minimizing him when it came to promoting that film in China. I do hear one of...
Don't pretend you care about that, because you don't.
The common arguments being that people don't want new characters or that new creations can't compete with older concepts.
Who's saying
this
that?
is untrue. Japan has been creating new IPs pretty much every other week with new mangas that cover various genres while also making new characters at insane paces.
Okay, let me ask you a question here then, buddy. What's the cancellation rate for Shonen Jump titles? How many titles that come out every year get canceled after a few weeks? Let me tell you actually. So let's take that down. Let's test that one. Shonen Jump titles. Let's take a look at that so far. So list of series run in Shonen Jump. Let's pick this up real quick. Let's talk about this, right? So let's go within the last year, just this year. 2024, right? Let's start from the top. By the way, this is titles that will launch in 2024, by the way. Not we're continuing beyond that. So, Shadow Eliminators. First issue was the first issue of the year. Got canceled 21st. So, 21 issues. Super Psychic Policeman Chojo. Still going on presently. That's 2. Dear Anemone was canceled within roughly 17 issues. So, that's another cancel. That's 3. Astral Royale. 4 issues still going on. Kyoto Necromance. That's 5. That was canceled within under 20 issues. 19 issues. Psych House. Even less. That's 6. Even less. Yokai Buster Murakami. That's 7. Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi. Himaten. Ichi the Witch. Shinobi Undercover. And Haku Taku. That's 12 titles in a year. And a few of these are still ongoing. But again, they're all within that 20 issue point in time. So again, what it comes down to is simply this. Yeah, Japan makes a lot of titles. Ton of shonen titles every year, every week. But not all of them survive long enough for you to hear about them. This guy also complained when Japan raised the age of consent. Did he really? I wouldn't. Okay.
My Hero Academia alone has made more new iconic superheroes in the past 5 years than Marvel or DC has in the last 20. And that's not...
Considering how disappointing the ending of My Hero Academia was, that's not really the best option to discuss, to use that as a comparison. Also, you're saying it made new heroes when you're showing Overhaul, which is a choice.
Not hyperbole. Why is it that when Japan adds to their...
Also, you know one of my favorite superheroes in My Hero Academia is? It's Fat Gum. Just telling you right now, Fat Gum's an example of everything you hate in the character. But you're praising Fat Gum? Praising My Hero Academia? With Fat Gum? Hey, listen. I'm not saying you're being a hypocrite. But you're being a hypocrite.
Legacy media like Dragon Ball, they actually add new characters without ruining the old ones. And yet when Western creators like at Marvel try, they come up with god-awful designs like Safe Space and Snowflake.
Safe Space and Snowflake never made it to the never made it to publishing. If your best example are rejected characters who were dropped the moment they were deemed unpopular by everyone, maybe you don't have a good argument. A good example of a modern character from Marvel would be someone like Kamala Khan, who is universally pretty liked, even by critics of Marvel.
Listen to their creator explain why he made them. It's just listen.
Screen time is a internet kid taken to its sort of logical conclusion as a youth.
Now, this is an example of terrible actual creativeness. I really do not think that the new Warriors here were any good. They were all, with the exception of B negative, because Cyber Vampire, that's kind of cool, they were pretty terrible. Safe Space especially was ridiculous. Trailblazer was a terrible one too. Again, it was fetishistic it was tokenizing. It was fetishistic of the nature of these characters. But they were also universally hated. And hell, I can tell you they were hated because I was writing articles about how they were hated when they were first announced. I was on the front lines not liking it back in the day. And they got... and the internet gas. Almost forgot about that nonsense. They were bad. Thankfully, B negative does appear in the comics. That's canon. Everyone else was tossed out. So, there you go.
He was exposed to his grandfather's experimental internet gas, and that has patched him permanently into the World Wide Web. Snowflake and Safe Space are the twins, and their names are very similar to screen time. It's this idea that these are terms that get thrown around on the internet that they don't see as derogatory, to take those words and kind of wear them as bad.
Yep, they did.
Badges of honor.
And it's no surprise that everyone clowned on Marvel for this because of how awful it is.
Yeah,
really,
stable idea.
Safe Space and Snowflake, that's the best you could come up with? And what the hell is internet gas? I think the core root problem of forced diversity in media is not a lack of characters, but a lack of real honest creativity from the people in charge of these projects.
Wait, hang on a second though. Let me get this right. For your big video that's gone on for like 20 minutes now, your best examples are the trailer for the TMNT movie everyone likes, a bunch of people online saying that Magneto should be black, The Witcher's casting choices, and a few Marvel characters who were scrapped before ever being published, with the exception of B Negative, who you don't mention. That's your best evidence, and hypotheticals about other things. Also, My Hero Academia has multiple trans characters in it, so what are you going to do about it? Multiple trans characters. That's canon. That's your example. It's the problem with the New Warriors weren't that they were just bad ideas, and they were just underwhelming. They were kind of offensive to a lot of people. I was offended just reading about them. It's not good. Alpha Eagle. Wait, the New Warriors are tokens and Kamala Khan isn't? Yeah. 100%. They're totally different. Kamala Khan's a fully realized character with a cast and a culture that she comes from that informs her character, but does not define it. Her whole character is in part trying to find a middle ground between being embarrassed by elements of her culture and embracing elements of her culture, trying to be like herself but also unlike herself. She's a fully fleshed out character. There is no comparison between Safe Space and Kamala Khan. Like, not even remotely.
It's much easier to buy the rights to an established franchise with a built-in fan base than to create a new concept from scratch. I mean, Velma was originally its own unique property. Or Warner Bros. Thought it sucked and didn't want to spend money on it until they used the Scooby-Doo license like a skin suit to fit their show, and that's how Velma came to be. My point is that forced diversity feels extremely dishonest.
Gavin Kara, thank for Super Chat. Can you even complain about New Warriors? It never came out. Yeah, exactly. It never came out. It's a rejected idea. Now, can you complain about it? Certainly. You can always complain about it. But is it meaningful to complain about it? Not really. Yet, a lot of these types will grip onto that, like with a death grip, because it's the best example they got.
Honest and is alarmingly racist when looked at from a critical point of view. What these creators are saying by race-swapping characters is that they only see legit.
I love how little evidence he has for his claims. He has to use the same shot of a trailer 15 times in this video to emphasize his point.
Legitimacy in predominantly white characters and instead of actually making new ones. It's just easier to take something people already know and then change it for easy.
Also, predominantly white characters, you're showing a bunch of anime characters. Okay. Splungus, thank you for Super Chat. I was offended by how shitty those ideas were. Yeah, they are shitty ideas. They're really bad. Black Rabbit, thank you for the Super Chat. Oh, super, I guess. Super thanks. No, the problem with Velma is it's a badly written show, more than anything else, too. But I digress.
Easy media coverage, but it's also why these projects largely fail at a lot.
Actually, L is mixed race, so he's not white.
Rates too, because people are tired of seeing what they once loved being forced to fit an ideology or message that doesn't represent what that media meant in the first place. Regardless of what these creators think or do, I will always connect with Spawn, even if I'm not an African American man. I will always love Storm, and characters like Psylocke, or hell, even non-human.
Which version of Psylocke, buddy? What version of Psylocke? Odd you chose Psylocke as your specific example. Just saying. If you know, you know.
Human characters like Beerus, even though I'm not what they are. It's not...
Because, oh god. Yeah, I'm not racist. I like Beerus. Did you read this script when you wrote it? Come on.
Important if the character looks like
Stellar Blade. Oh, Stellar Blade. Oh, you're gonna use Stellar Blade, the show, the thing that all of you complained about when it finally came out because it wasn't exactly what you wanted it to be.
If what you're seeing has more depth beyond the color of their skin or what's between their legs. Forced diversity is harming our entertainment far more than it's helping it. It's causing companies to lose millions.
Is it though? What is that what's causing it to lose millions? Also, Stellar Blade, interesting example. Forced diversity so bad, we need to go back to tradition. Shows Stellar Blade, a game that you all freaked out about when they added extra layers of clothing to its characters.
Fans are walking away from fandoms that they used to love, and it's making the entire medium as a whole far less exciting because of it. Black characters can and should exist, but they should not come at the expense and erasure of white characters or anyone else for that matter. Falcon should be Falcon, because that's his own original identity. He doesn't need the shield to legitimize himself as a character.
It's not about legitimizing him as a character, it's about continuing an arc for his character.
April doesn't need to be black in order to be seen as important in today's modern media either.
She doesn't need to be white either. She was made white from the comics to the show, so...
Spawn never needs to be a white guy because he's more than his ethnicity or gender.
Spawn's also covered head to toe with a hell costume after his skin melted off. He's not visible in a lot of ways as a minority.
All you see when you look at characters is their race or gender. It might be a good idea to take a step back and really analyze what you've been conditioned to see when it comes to what makes a character worth investing into.
But you've literally just done that. That's what you've done this whole video, my guy.
And if you see a white character and think they'd be better simply if their skin was different, then you are perpetuating a harmful practice that will never move the entertainment medium forward.
You literally have done that the whole time, man. What are you talking about?
We're all more than the color of our skin. And that, my friends, is why woke, forced diversity doesn't work and never will.
You didn't prove anything. Dude, that was terrible. That was ridiculous. I feel like getting like the Lily Orchard, like, that's you, Lily, but like for him, that was ridiculous. Oh my God. Also, despite him bringing up trans people, he didn't have a single example of a character who was made trans or gay that wasn't original. But then he says, oh, make your own characters. Then makes fun of another for them making the new Warriors. Granted, those characters sucked, but I digress. Black Rabbit, thank you for the super chat. It scares how much I used to sympathize with these opinions while having queer family and friends. Glad I broke away after the Fire Emblem English dub controversy. Yeah, again, listen, if you have ever bought into this back in the day and you're out of it now, that's a good thing. It shows you're growing. It shows you're developing. And again, I'm sure he's also one of those guys who gets angry if you have a picture of Jesus as a brown person. I remember when National Geographic released that years ago, the picture of what Jesus probably looked like, and it was a brown guy, because he lived in the Middle East. He's probably brown. You know, lots of trade from South Asia, from North Africa in that region. He probably wasn't white. And when National Geographic broke that story, people flipped out. They had a recreation of what Jesus probably looked like, and it got complaints from religious groups and everything. And that was a case where they said the same things they're saying now, you know? Again, here's the problem. Most of these videos don't have actual substance when talking about general trends. They work best when talking about a hyper-specific example, but even then, it doesn't really work. He hates on the original characters, and then they all complain about Finn from Star Wars. That's how it be. That's how it is, because they have to complain about something. They have to have an enemy of some kind. It's ridiculous, and it's stereotypical. I think we have time for one more video, and I'm going to go with the one that's been requested a lot. This guy. Short, fat otaku. I don't have no idea anything about him. I just know he exists. So, if it's bad, I'm blaming all of you for recommending him. And we have a pretty big audience still, so I don't want to let you guys all go without at least one more, you know? But we'll end after this. This will be the last one, but let's get a good one, all right? There's a lot of views on this one. The identification with evil. Okay, I need to find a... Ari Nerd, thank you for Super Chat. What are your thoughts on Cutie Honey? I love Cutie Honey. Cutie Honey is great. I do like the Hideaki Anno version from the 2000s. I think that's quite good. That looks too long for a final video. The guy, thank you for Super Chat. Oh dear God, not him. I got a lot of requests for this guy, so I have no idea what he's... I've actually never seen anything he's done, so I don't know anything about him. Oh, this guy sounds painful. Let's go for a short one. I don't feel like dealing with... Oh, God, these thumbnails. Acting white with a Confederate flag, because Confederacy is white, apparently. What even... What is this channel? What? These thumbnails are terrible. Consumption as... Oh, there's a lot of body shaming I'm seeing here. It seems like a reoccurring trend. Racist. This is gonna be painful, isn't it? This is gonna hurt me a lot, I feel like, isn't it? These all look terrible. These all look like garbage. Really? This is the one you want me to watch? This one? Ugh. Really? This is it? This is the one you want me to watch? Alright. Okay. You guys want me to? I got a few requests for this one. I don't know why. Why we Lindsay Ellis sleep? What the fuck? What the fuck is with this? Human Centipede with the left? Like, what are you talking about? The leftist carpool, the leftists call everything fascist. Like, what is this? Everything normal is right wing. Okay, consumption is identity. This might be the one that fits the mold best, but okay, let's do this one. Because it's short too. Is the other thing too. I don't want to last too long with this stuff because this is driving me nuts already. Okay.
A year ago, I did a video called The Identification with Evil, which on its surface was about the new guy meme, while the actual meat of the video was about how the constant drive towards equality that comes out of the left causes people to not only excuse evil, but to become evil themselves, to advocate...
Become evil themselves. What does that mean? Become evil themselves? I mean, I guess to watch the video to find out, but I'm not even going to
advocate for and commit evil acts, because good and evil are ideas that, when you boil it down, change depending on who's viewing the scene. And there's no reason for them to privilege any one person's view over anybody else's. Meaning, when your average person reads the original New Guy comic, it seems like the New Guy...
Oh, this comic? Oh, who cares? That's worth making a video about? Okay.
is the good person in the situation, and the purple-haired SJW midget is the evil person. When the New Guy says...
The midget? She's just slightly shorter than the other guy. What? Okay.
How would you like it if somebody stole from you? He's appealing...
Meownion, thank you for super chat. Anthony, bail out. There's still time. I might just. This seems bizarre to me already. I don't know how I feel about this.
To a specific moral framework. A society that values property rights will consider stealing immoral, no matter who's doing the stealing and who the victim is. Because you wouldn't want to be stolen from, therefore you should not steal from other people. Meanwhile...
Yes, I really care about the company in this situation. They're insured. They're fine. I mean, listen, this comic got a lot of hate and was ridiculous, but I don't think it's worth making a video about. It's just a not well thought out comic that's oversimplifying a theme. I don't particularly care. I care about media trends. I don't care about some random comic published. It's like it's a big deal.
The purple hair thinks it's okay to steal from PewDiePie. Yes, the comic's reference to when PewDiePie's house got broken into. Because he's rich, he's white, he's a gamer, etc., etc. She has a moral system where these intrinsic...
This wasn't about corporations. I thought it was about shoplifting. Oh, I totally misremembered this comic. Yeah, that's just whatever. Who cares?
Qualities of the victim.
This comic isn't. This comic's not worth making a video
about. The author
about.
of the comic herself.
Just an idiot. MK2. Fall back. It's too cringe. Yeah, this is actually hurting me. I actually feel. I feel my. This actually is making me cringe a little bit.
Is a social justice warrior, and she intended for the New Guy to come off as entirely unreasonable. Anytime on Tumblr before the great migration from Tumblr to Twitter, you'll notice that fandom communities are the most toxic things around. If you like the wrong shows or movies, you're problematic and a bigot. If you play a video game the wrong way, you're problematic and a bigot. Ship the wrong characters together, that is...
Are you really making fun of Princess Wheat? Okay, whatever.
Believe that person X and person Y in the show or whatever would make a good romantic couple, and you're problematic and a bigot. Yesterday, this thread went I knew you would lock your account. I was right to archive this thread. This thread went viral, and it's long and cancerous, but it's worth talking about. This card...
Are you really making a video about fucking Twitter drama? I mean, I've used Twitter threads in as evidence in posts before, but the thesis is separate from that. Also, this has nothing to do with my topic of this stream. This is pointless.
Does such a good job explaining why pro-shipping is bad. Holy shit. I am now going to have to fill your brain with some absolutely...
I am not getting into a pro-shipping versus anti-shipping discussion this stream. I'm just not. I value my time and yours too much to waste your time with this bullshit. But let's keep going.
Useless information. I apologize in
maybe
advance.
They won't.
Pro-shipping is when I feel like abuse and grants pedos platforms. Therefore, art actively harms victims and validates abusers. People can ship who they want. Why do you want to ship incest or pedophilia? Even if...
This is like some Lily Orchard shit. Yeah, no. No, I'm done. This was bad from the beginning. That hurt me a little bit. That was okay. As an apology, I would do something else for the last video of the stream. That actually hurt me a little bit. That genuinely was really bad. I hate that. I hated that so much. That genuinely caused me pain. God. Ugh. Freaking ridiculous. Ugh. Oh. Yeah, no. Okay. So that was a mistake on my part, I think. Even playing that for a few minutes has caused me psychic damage. That one hurt me. That was rough. Okay. Let's do a palate cleanser. All right? Let's do some palate cleanser. Let me get a good video on here real quick. Ugh. Now I'm getting all the Comics Matter nonsense on my feed. I'll fix this up quickly. I'm seeing myself on here, actually, a few of these. Let's okay, let me make a few quick adjustments. Don't recommend any of the channels I just watched ever. Do not recommend Endymion TV. Do not recommend your boy Zach. Do not recommend Altori or whatever her name is, and certainly do not recommend that short fat otaku guy. My God, that was not good. Okay. You know what? Let's end it on a high note. Why do we have to force ourselves to watch something else that's terrible? Let's call it end. We're at a good point. Oh, Veritas Joe. Okay, let's do Veritas Joe. Let's take a look at that. Maybe. Oz Media. Click the Oz Media right here. Okay, OSP is always great. Oz Media, Veritas Joe, Clownsfish, One Topic. One Topic's excellent. OSP is excellent too. Actually, OSP I'm going to be referencing in my upcoming video for this on Friday. I did mention before that there will be a lot of tentacles, and I do have. Let me show this. Cool. I do have a early preview of Friday's video, and I did mean they are tentacles. I was not making that up. Tentacles are ahead. See, there's some tentacles right there. There's an early draft. I'm sure Sai would love me sharing the early draft image for that, but there you go. Be fun. Clownfish is bad, actually, I'm pretty sure. Well, Clownfish, actually, it's funny. I know Clownfish has reacted to some of my old articles back in the day. Back when I was still just a new writer, they were reacting to my stuff. So, Anyway, that was one of the good creators in this episode. That was oh God, yeah. Alpha Eagle, I bet you can't debunk my videos. Okay, we'll give that a shot. Alpha Eagle, let's take a look at your channel. How long if your videos aren't too long, I'll be down for that. Let's take a look. All right, from chat. I'm not sure I feel good about that, my guy. I don't want to, like, attack your channel. It's a little, like, I don't know. This would feel a little mean. You sure? You want me to do this, dude? Like, Alpha Eagle, are you sure you actually want me to try debunking your videos? It's a little small there. I don't want to do that to you. Yeah, no, I don't feel ethically good about, like, attacking criticizing a channel that is, like, so much smaller, Like, the other channels I'm criticizing, they're, like, really, really big channels. I don't feel guilty about that. I don't want to, like, bully a smaller channel. Yeah, I don't feel ethically good about that. Like, I know you're saying you want me to, but I don't feel morally okay with that. Yeah, that feels like bullying. I don't know. You'll be fine? Okay. Let's take a look. Okay, Blackwashing Heroes. I feel that fits. That's your most popular video. Let's take a look at that one. Okay.
Hey everyone, this is Alpha Eagle. In this episode, we will be taking a look at a Now This video about whitewashing. Now This is a left-leaning media outlet. In this video, they will tell us that being hypocrites and having a double standard is somehow a good thing, and that whitewashing is bad, but blackwashing is good. And as usual, I will put a link in the description so you can get the full context of this video. Now let's begin.
Whitewashing is a problem.
I actually agree. I think that Bane should have been played by a Hispanic person instead of a British actor. The thing is, it doesn't...
We kind of already discussed this topic already, though. We discussed that whitewashing is not good, typically, but blackwashing typically doesn't have much of an impact. It adds diversity to a medium that lacks diversity. And if the character's race doesn't really have any impact, it's not really a big deal. Okay.
It doesn't happen that often in Hollywood anymore. Rarely do you see any kind of whitewashing whatsoever.
Liam Neeson in Batman Begins to Scarlett Johansson in Ghost in the Shell and, well, pretty much any U.S. anime adaptation ever.
None of these are examples of whitewashing.
Yes, they are examples of whitewashing. All of them are. What are you talking about?
Ra's al Ghul or Ra's al Ghul's. His race is ambiguous at best. While
he's Middle Eastern. He's from the Middle East. He was born in the Middle East. We know he's Middle Eastern.
Well, he has an Arabic name. In the comics, he does not really look Arabic.
He's a stereotype of a Fu Manchu villain at first, before evolving into something more complex. He's not white. He's definitely not Liam Neeson.
Light skin and blue eyes. These are Caucasian features. Also, it was revealed that his father might be Sensei, who is Asian. And he was played by white actor David Warner before in the animated series.
Yeah, but he was voiced by David Warner. He wasn't physically portrayed by him.
With an Arabic name, Caucasian features, and being played by multiple white actors, and a possible Asian father, it's honestly kind of difficult to pin down what race he actually is. Major Kusanagi from...
Okay, so is the guy who has an Asian dad not Asian? Oh my god. Also, he has an Arabic name. Okay, whatever, okay.
From Ghost in the Shell is a cyborg, and she has no race.
She has a race. She's a human being who's cybernized. Mitoko Kusanagi is not white. Even in Ghost in the Shell, the live-action movie, she gets the body of a white person, but she herself is not born white. But in every other version, she's very Asian.
The title suggests her body is a robotic shell. It can look like any age, race, or gender. In the animated movie, at the end, she gains a childlike body. And in the animated movie, her race is also ambiguous.
Her race isn't ambiguous. She's Japanese. She's Japanese. Mitoko Kusanagi is not white. I have to tell you this. She's what? She's Japanese. Okay? Her race isn't ambiguous. She's just Japanese. Nikosi G, thank you for Super Chat. For both of them, actually. Just realized how many superhero movies whitewash. I think you did it twice, man, by accident. Yeah, no, they whitewash a lot, actually. There's a lot of whitewashing in Jap, especially in the Nolan Batman movies. Like, really especially. Yeah. Not sure why I donated twice. I'm sorry there. Abhishek Verma, I had pointed you towards a good vid from Short Fat Otaku, so would be going in blind. Why didn't you watch it? He talked about Saints Row Dev in that vid. It was easy to react to. I don't know which video you're talking about. I just knew that you recommended Short Fat Otaku, and I knew that other people recommended Short Fat Otaku. I didn't had a bit of an issue there. But yeah, this is not this is I don't know. You really want me to react to this? Okay.
Has blue eyes, which is a Caucasian feature.
Yeah, but they also reveal that her eyes are replaced. The eyes are artificial. That's not really a good understanding of what her actual ethnicity is. Her body is cybernetic. Her eyes are replaced with augmented eyes.
It just so happens that...
Yep, okay, I see you in chat saying, Robots don't have a race, her brain is Asian, but her body can be any race, the actor doesn't matter. Well, the actor does matter. She's meant to still look like her original self in the original anime. Also, she's not a robot, she's a human being who is cybernetic. That's different. It means it was a person who had augmentations done on her body. And in fact, we learn later on, it's because a lot of her body was damaged in an accident, and it was cybernetically enhanced before joining Section 9. So, that right there is a big deal. Also, Japanese people can have blue eyes if they're interracial, which still makes them Japanese.
So she looks Caucasian in the live-action film. The movie explains that she was a teenage Japanese girl when she technically died. Her entire body is essentially a prosthetic shell with a human consciousness inside, so she has no race. Goku from Dragon Ball Z is not even human, so again, he's not part of any race on Earth. He even had a tail like a monkey, so he doesn't have a race.
But what about when a white character is
played
one by a person of color on screen? Representation might upset some people who can't accept popular comic book characters like Nick Fury, Johnny Storm, and Domino as people of color, but this thing some people call blackwashing is not a problem. It's not even a thing.
She is saying it's not okay for white actors to play non-white characters, and it's called whitewashing. But when black actors play white characters, it's okay because it's called representation. Now,
Well, no, because it's just recasting. The difference there is that when you have predominantly a white culture that mainly has casted white actors in the place of Asian people in the past, that is different from casting a black actor or a person of color otherwise in the role of a role that was traditionally associated with white people. For example, Othello, I mentioned multiple times before, was traditionally cast as a black man for many, 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 many years. It was cast as a white man playing a black character for many, many, many years. It wasn't until the mid-20th century where it became commonplace in theater to cast a black actor playing Othello. Previously, however, there was only a couple performances by black actors of Othello previously. On film, it wasn't until the mid-90s a black actor played Othello, and that was Lawrence Fishburne. And also, Nick Fury being played by Samuel L. Jackson, that was done in the comics first. It was based on Ultimate Nick Fury, who was black, and designed after Samuel L. Jackson, with the hope being that when they made Nick Fury into a film again, following the 90s film with David Hasselhoff, that Samuel L. Jackson would be willing to play Nick Fury, which of course he was. So yeah. The Goku one is the closest you can get to a full argument yet because he is alien, even though he is very clearly inspired by the Monkey King from Journey to the West. So very centered in Asian folklore. Having him be a white person isn't against the character necessarily, but it's an odd choice to fight for. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you're not technically wrong, but why? Why make him a white person? You're not going against the character. He's an alien, but why choose a white guy to be Goku? That's the real question. It's not so much you're wrong, but why insist on it? That's what it comes down to. Also, he is based on the Chinese character from Journey to the West. Again, a major point right there. It's not canonically coded in the story itself, but it's a connection so obvious that even if you have a cursory knowledge of folklore, you should pick up on that.
Isn't that convenient? This is an obvious example of hypocrisy and double standard.
But let's start with why whitewashing is so harmful.
Here we go.
Despite all the amazingly nerdy movies and shows coming out in the recent years, people of color are still barely represented.
Yeah.
Look at any random trailer or poster, and odds are you'll usually see a white person as the lead.
It's funny. In her example of the lack of representation, she shows Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And
yes, as the lead. You didn't listen to the whole sentence. She said, as the lead. Peter Quill is the lead of Guardians of the Galaxy.
in the clip that she used is a Hispanic man in Dave Bautista as Drax.
Not the lead. And she's not the lead either.
Black woman in Zoe Saldana as Glamora. And
also not the lead.
An Asian woman in Pam Kilamatif. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong.
Also not the lead.
As Mantis. But it's somehow lacking representation. That doesn't even make any sense.
That's because you weren't listening to what she just said. She said, as the lead. As the lead character. Peter Quill is the lead character of Guardians of the Galaxy 2. The only other exception could be Rocket Raccoon, who is also played by a white actor.
She also shows a poster of X-Men Days of Future Past with a black woman, Halle Berry as Storm, an Asian woman, Bing Bing Fan as Blink. The movie itself...
Right, but Blink doesn't have a single line of dialogue in the film. Maybe like one line, if that. Storm is barely in the movie either. The leads are primarily Hugh Jackman, James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, and Jennifer Lawrence. Those are the leads of the movie. As the lead is the key word stated that you ignore, which makes this entire section completely pointless.
Has all kinds of other races represented, including Black, Asian, Hispanic, and American Indian, as well as...
All of those characters have barely any role in the narrative, and they're also, again, not the lead.
So, several other cultures like Russian, Jewish, British, and Canadian. But I guess those cultures don't count because they...
Canadian's not a race. Oh my god.
They are white cultures. So even her examples that she's given us, that she claims to have a lack of representation, she's contradicting herself by giving us these films that have a lot of representation.
Again, let me repeat. The actual point she said, listen closely,
coming out in the recent years, people of color are still barely represented.
Listen,
look at any random trailer or poster, and odds are you'll usually see a white person as the lead.
As the lead. A white person as the lead.
It's funny. In her example of the lack of her
Your entire point was based on you not understanding what was actually said.
Examples that she's given us that she claims to have a lack of representation. She's contradicting herself by giving us these films that have a lot of representation. And it's actually proven her wrong. Because
the fact of the matter is that all the representation you can find in X-Men Days of Future Past are characters that have at most single-digit number of lines. You're kind of proving her point more because they're set dressing to the narrative. They're not core components of it.
It goes completely against the narrative that she's trying to push here.
So when Hollywood takes one of the few examples of canon representation that we do have and cast a white person for whatever reason, you're taking away an opportunity for us to be seen. For me personally, this was especially egregious in the Avatar: The Last Airbender movie. I was very attached to the show's character Katara, from her dark skin to her great big poofy hair. I was crushed when I saw white actress Nicola Peltz in the movie adaptation because it erased the aspects of Katara that I saw in myself.
But
100% agree with that. Yeah. They famously whitewashed the Avatar: The Last Airbender movie. They took away all cases of representation. If you argue that, like, movies are causing, or they're trying to ginger side right now, why are you still silent about that? It's one of the biggest events of whitewashing in modern blockbuster last, 20 years.
Does Katara really have dark skin and poofy hair? Her skin...
Yes. Yes, she does have dark skin. What kind of question is that? Yeah, Katara is dark-skinned.
Looks no darker than a white person with a tan, and her...
Are you serious? She's based on the Inuits. The water tribes are based on Inuits. What? What are you talking about? Katara. Let me bring up a photo of Katara here. One second. Katara. A white person with a tan. That's what you're saying. And I'm going to bring it up right now. Are you saying that this character right here looks like a white person with a tan? A white person with a tan. This is a white person with a tan, is what you're saying. Are you going to say, oh, she has blue eyes? Who cares? It's a fictional race. It's not real. It's not based on actual genetics from modern day. Still, even then, Inuits also can have blue eyes. So, there you go. This has to be a bit. Come on. Come on, man.
Hair looks straight to me. It does not look nor move like natural African hair. Also,
she's not African. She's Inuit.
She has blue eyes, which is, again, a Caucasian feature. Like racial...
It's not exclusively a Caucasian feature. Also, why are all the Water Tribe people brown-skinned then? Explain that. Explain how it's all as a tan. Oh my god. It's Wes. Thank you for Super Chat. I'm guessing Alpha is legally blind. I don't want to be too mean.
But her race is not that easy to determine. I also believe that the Avatar characters, their races are fictional from what I understand.
On the other hand, having a person of color play a previously white character isn't taking away white representation.
Yes, it does take away white representation. How does it not? I mean, if the character was played by a white actor, that would be representing white persons. But since it's not being portrayed by a white actor, that is taking away what would have been white representation.
It's creating new representation and role models for people that Hollywood has ignored for too long.
Ignored for too long? What are you talking about? That is a lie and factually incorrect. There has been non-white actors in Hollywood for many decades.
That's not what she said. She said ignored. The fact that you can point to Gone with the Wind and say there were black slaves in the movie does not mean that they were black actors were given fair treatment under Hollywood. Yes, they've been around for decades, but you cannot pretend that racism was not instilled within the Hollywood system to this very day, as a matter of fact. There are multiple actors who were not even considered for roles because of their race. Countless. Throughout the grand history of Hollywood, despite it not really being a factor. It's sad. You can point to Night of the Living Dead as remarkable because it had showcased a black actor in the lead role, and even for decades later, it was still a standout film because so few films would put a black lead in the main role. This has to be a bit. You have to be. There's no way you actually believe this.
When Michael B. Jordan took over as the Human Torch, it opened a door for a new narrative in which a black man and a white woman could be siblings long before This Is Us made us sob every Tuesday night.
Okay, so why is that a good thing?
Why is it a bad thing?
I think we can all agree that Michael B. Jordan is a pretty damn good actor, right? Despite the film's flaws, he's an extremely talented dude who absolutely did justice to the role.
So because he's a good actor, that somehow makes it okay? You could say the same thing for Liam Neeson or Scarlett Johansson.
No, not Scarlett Johansson. Certainly that doesn't apply with Motoko Kusanagi. Baichi Apiodera, thank you for Super Chat. Again, I will say that people of color actors who take parts in historical dramas that are accurate are heroes and should be saluted. Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think that one of the best performances of any actress would be, in recent memory at least, there's been some really good ones. Well, I say recent, but really I'm saying like way back. Some of the performances in what was it, Selma? Some of those were fantastic. It's not a bit they've been doing this for years. Yeah, I can tell. Harriet was really good and exceptional. Hidden Figures, That was a fantastic role with, again, historical, playing the history of it all. Fantastic performances. I can go on and on. 12 Years a Slave, I think, but I want to talk about slave narratives because I feel like those get a little too overexposed for historical purposes. But anyway.
They are good actors, so it must be okay for them to play other races, right?
Johnny Storm's whiteness is not essential to his character. The Human Torch has always been defined by his hot-headed attitude, so why should it matter if he's played by a black man?
Again, you could say the same thing about most non-white characters, including all that you mentioned.
No. Because Ra's al Ghul is very much cemented in the region he comes from. His regionality is important to his character. Motoko Kusanagi is a native of Japan who is a member of the Japanese task forces therein of Section 9. These are really specific components that matter to the ethnicity of the character. But Johnny Storm being white isn't. He's from America. A melting pot, a place where different ethnicities are all around us. His ethnicity has nothing to do with the character that he embodies.
Race is not essential to Ra's al Ghul, to Major Kusanagi, to Katara, or Goku.
Katara especially it's important because she comes from a different region of the world.
So why does it matter if they are played by white actors?
It doesn't take anything away from the role and gave kids of color a new hero to look up to.
It gave kids of color a new hero of color to look up to? So non-white kids can't look up to white heroes? That's ridiculous.
That's not what she said. I'm going to ignore what you just said because that's pointless.
Ridiculous. The race, the gender, or anything about the character doesn't matter. Any kid of any race or any gender could look up to any hero they want. They don't have to be the same race or same gender. That's just plain ridiculous, and frankly, it's kind of racist.
So why do you care about blackwashing then? Simple. Why do you care? If it doesn't matter, then why do you care so much to argue, make a video about it?
The same goes for Nick Fury. He's just a guy with an eye patch who's in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D. There's nothing about his character or his role that requires him to be white.
As for Nick Fury, before the MCU even existed, there was a Nick Fury in the Ultimate Marvel Universe who was black and looked a lot like Samuel L. Jackson. So there was a precedent set. Whereas with characters like Johnny Storm, there was no non-white Human Torch in the comics to be based off of for this new movie. Therefore, they were inaccurate to the comic.
Now look at the Ancient One.
Again, doesn't really matter because this entire argument doesn't matter because blackwashing is totally fine.
Doctor Strange. They're from the Himalayas teaching Himalayan culture and folklore. It's central to the character.
And yet...
But in the movie, the Ancient One is played by a white woman. It's a huge missed opportunity to cast an Asian actor in a role.
As for Doctor Strange, I actually agree. The Ancient One should have been played by a Tibetan actor. The thing is, Disney wanted to cater to the Chinese audience, and China does not acknowledge Tibet, so Disney caved on.
Bachi Epidera, thank you for Super Chat. Wasn't the Johnny Storm being black problem that his genetic sister was white? I don't think so. I think it's established he's a half-sister, I think. But I'm not positive. Keep in mind, I barely remember what happens in Fan Four Stick because the movie is painful to sit through. But I recall her being either half-sister or adopted. I forget exactly what.
On that one. So blame China's politics.
I know the father is black, though, in the role.
Not whitewashing for that one.
He originates from Tibet, so if you acknowledge that Tibet is a place and that he's Tibetan, you risk alienating 1 billion people who think that that's...
Okay, then just make him Chinese then. There you go. Problem solved.
And risk the Chinese government going, hey, you know, one of the biggest film watching countries in the world, we're not going to show your movie because you decided to get political.
The Ancient One could have been elevated to the same status that Samuel L. Jackson brought to Nick Fury. He inflated Fury from a 60s James Bond homage to a movie icon in his own right.
So a white actor couldn't have made Nick Fury an icon? Your reasons are flimsy at best.
That's not what she said. So... why do you say that's not a response? She didn't say that. So what are you talking about?
And Zazie Beetz could do the same for Domino. I grew up watching Domino on Wolverine and the X-Men, where she's portrayed with comics-accurate pale blue skin and a black circle around her eye. Now, she's a black woman with natural hair, and her traditional look is still there right down to the eye tattoo. It's just inverted now. But again, Domino in the comics isn't defined by being a white woman. It's not part of her character in any way. Casting a black actress does nothing to damage the Domino we know.
That's not accurate at all. Her skin is lyrically white, not pale blue or Caucasian, lyrically white.
Yeah, but that's not central to her character. That's the thing. The eye tattoo is. That's a central component of her character. But if you invert the skin tones, nothing changes, as she pointed out.
Fine with Domino being any race for the movie, but whoever they chose should have been painted literally all white, like the way Rebecca Romijn was all blue for Mystique. So
no, because unlike Mystique being blue, Domino being that color isn't important. What is important is the eye tattoo. That's it.
To just take a black actress and paint a white around her eye is just lazy and inaccurate. Her hair was also inaccurate. They could have used a black actress with straightened hair or used just a wig.
How do you not understand the importance of her natural hair color being a factor there? Do you not hear yourself when you say this, that you wanted to paint a black actor white and straighten their hair? Do you not hear that? And realize the problems with that statement? Okay.
Again, to not do this is just lazy. Also,
again,
notice
you
that
asked for
she
this.
complained that
I didn't
Katara's
want to do this,
hair
but you
was
begged for it.
supposedly changed for the last Airbender movie. But it's okay to change Domino's hair, which is straight in the comics, to an afro. This is just another example of her double standards.
In fact, it just gives black nerds like me someone else I can cosplay as, who I can see myself in. Someone who I can watch on screen and feel represented.
Nobody is stopping you from cosplaying as any character you want.
Oh my god, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. How do you miss the point this badly?
Cosplayers do what they call race bending, and you can do the same. There is no law preventing you from cosplaying as a white character or any character of any race. So go ahead, do it. Nothing is stopping you.
How do you miss the point this badly? She's talking about seeing someone like herself on screen represented. The cosplay is just an example of how you can express a connection to that character. But, like, how do you miss the point of this? There's no way you can miss the point this badly. Also, black cosplayers get harassed constantly in conventions. You would know this if you went to convention scenes or talked to cosplayers, especially black ones.
Blackwashing, race bending, or whatever the hell you want.
We can call it blackwashing? You said blackwashing wasn't a thing.
Blackwashing is not a problem. It's not even a thing. I just call it a good thing.
Why would you call it a good thing? This entire video
Why do you call it a bad thing?
Didn't give any valid reason why it's a good thing. In fact, you said...
To say that... Okay, first off, this is a video essayist having a highlights reel on Now This. This isn't exactly... Princess Weeks, big channel, fairly successful at making sure she articulates her points. So, let's actually put this in perspective here.
Said it was a bad thing for white people, and that's the point of this racist video. It's only bad when white people do it. That's how you can tell this video is racist, when something is good when every other race does it. But
Alpha Eagle, please talk to black cosplayers. Ask, and by talk to them, I mean listen to them. I don't want to hear you talk over them. Ask them their experiences while cosplaying. See how easy it is for them to walk around without someone harassing them for cosplaying a character that's not black, typically. Shadowlands, thank you for Super Chat. These guys always get mad about a white character, not when an Asian character having a race change, or a Latino character always white character. Yeah, well, they do complain about that, but they were just complaining just now about Katara being, they were complaining about Katara, so that's not a black character, it's a brown character. Or they're talking about Goku and, Motoko Kusanagi. Those are also Not black people, but they're people, they're characters of color. Oh my god, this is ridiculous.
But it's only bad when a certain race does it. This was Alpha Eagle and I Gotta Fly. So subscribe, share, like, comment.
All right, Alpha Eagle, I just want you to know, you did ask for that. You did ask me to respond to your video. All right, I think that's all the time we have for today. Yeah, so I think we're gonna just try easing out of this for a little bit, answering a few questions before I go. Okay, so NAS, black cosplayers are held to a higher standard and are always stereotyped and boxed into a category. But when they decide to step out of that box, they get mad about it. Yeah, exactly. It's horrible. I've heard of black people cosplaying Garnet getting harassed, of all things, because she's not canonically black. Garnet is very black, though. What is wrong with people? Oh my god. Yeah, no, Saber Sin, I remember last time people shat their pants over a white person wearing a kimono. Can you be more specific? Several white people have worn kimonos before. Can you give a specific example of what you're talking about? And what people you're talking about reacting to it? Nice stream. Yep, that was something. That was something. So what do we learn from all this? What did I learn from this, from my essay? Which I will be referencing this stream, as evidence or what have you. That most of these video essays don't seem very articulate, that I found. A lot of them seem to be very vague. They gesture wildly towards specific, in the past it was like this, and my grandfather went through this, and therefore it was better. We don't really speak about the specifics yet. We don't really talk about the ideas presented in a meaningful fashion. They speak in general terms about a few hyper-specific examples and really are reaching for whatever new thing just came out. It could be Captain Marvel in Civil War II. It could be April O'Neil on the front cover of TMNT. But regardless, it ends up being the same message in the end. That we are trying to be more diverse, to advance in some way. And what ends up happening is they reach for random things. Okay, I'm not articulating that very well, but I digress. So, end of this week, we'll be going to, as my thumbnail preview implied, we're going to Lovecraft Country. End of this week. Big old tentacles. The next week, the Forced Diversity video formally. And there'll be a much more developed, much larger video than this stream. Well, not larger, but more focused and specific. Bye, Chiapio Dara. Thank you for the super chat. The biggest issue with my writing is being told that my Asian character needs to be made black for diversity. So there is that lull. Yeah, but Asian characters is diversity. Different. That's a weird thing to say. I don't know. I think if you're writing a story that reflects your worldview and your ideas, it was a white person who told you to make your Asian character black. Oh, well, there you go. That's the thing right there, isn't it? It's they're talking over other people, it seems like. Anyway, the problem with most anti-woke YouTuber arguments, they never refer to anything specific outside of Twitter and Reddit threads. Yeah, because that's all the world to them. That's all they care about. It's not the reality. It's just, yeah. Please end on a better video next time. Yeah, I will try. Well, that's all the time I have for today. I'm going to need some water after this because my throat is parched. So, everyone, thank you so much for joining. I will see you all another time. Bye-bye.